Adrian Kane knew two things about the night everything changed. First, that rain always meant trouble in Chicago, and second, that walking past someone in danger would haunt him worse than any boardroom battle ever could. He'd spent 6 years building walls around himself, around his daughter, around the carefully controlled empire he ran with ruthless precision. Then he saw her stumbling through the downpour, portfolio clutched against her chest like a shield, two suited predators closing in fast. The choice should have been simple: keep walking, stay clean, protect what mattered. Instead, Adrian stepped into the storm and shattered every rule he'd lived by since his wife died. Some nights destroy you, others save you. This one would do both. Before we begin, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city name in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button, and let's dive into a night that proved sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is care. The rain hammered Michigan Avenue like it had a personal vendetta against anyone stupid enough to be outside past midnight. Adrian Kane stood beneath the overhang of Kane Dynamics glass tower, watching water sheet down 40 stories of reflective steel, and wished he'd left the office 3 hours ago when his assistant had politely suggested it. "Mr. Kane, Evie's going to be asleep by the time you get home." He'd waved her off. Evie was always asleep when he got home, 8 years old, and she barely remembered what it felt like to have dinner with her father on a weeknight. Some nights he'd stand in her doorway watching her breathe, her dark hair spread across the pillow like his late wife's used to, and he'd feel the familiar ache that never really went away, just dulled enough to be survivable. Tonight, that ache sat heavier than usual. He loosened his tie, felt the expensive silk slide through his fingers, and wondered when exactly he'd become the kind of man who measured his life in quarterly earnings instead of moments with his daughter. The lobby behind him gleamed empty and sterile. Carl, the night security guard, had nodded off at his desk again, chin tucked against his chest. Adrian didn't blame him. Nothing ever happened here after dark except the occasional executive stumbling out drunk from some pointless networking dinner. He pulled out his phone, checking the black car's ETA. 4 minutes. He could wait 4 minutes. That's when he heard the scream. Not loud, just sharp and cut short, like someone had clapped a hand over a mouth mid-shout. Adrian's head snapped up. Across the street, barely visible through the rain, a figure stumbled between parked cars. Small frame, long coat whipping in the wind. Running. Two larger shapes followed. Adrian's hand was already on the door before his brain caught up. He pushed through into the storm, cold rain instantly soaking through his suit jacket. The wind hit him like a fist, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and exhaust fumes. "Hey!" His voice barely carried over the downpour. The figure, a woman, he could see now, tripped over the curb, went down hard on her knees. Something scattered from her arms across the sidewalk. Papers, maybe. A portfolio case skidded into a puddle. The two men behind her weren't running anymore. They slowed, confident now that she was cornered against a construction fence. One of them laughed, the sound ugly, even through the rain. Adrian started across the street, his dress shoes slipping on wet pavement. Up close, he recognized them both. Derek Voss from Legal and Mitchell Chen from International Acquisitions. Both senior enough to have reserved parking, both married, both currently backing a woman half their size against a chain-link fence, like they had every right to be there. "Gentlemen," Adrian's voice came out colder than the rain, "I believe you're needed elsewhere." Derek spun, his face flushed red from alcohol and something meaner. His expensive suit was rumpled, tie yanked loose. "Kane? Jesus, what are you? This doesn't concern you." "She works in my building." A lie, but a useful one. "That makes it my concern." Mitchell stepped forward, swaying slightly, drunk enough to be stupid. "We were just talking to her. Friendly conversation. At 1 a.m, in the rain." Adrian moved between them and the woman, who was still on her knees gathering soaked papers with shaking hands. "Conversation's over." "She owes us an apology," Derek slurred, jabbing a finger past Adrian's shoulder. "Little bitch spilled wine all over Mitchell's jacket at Rothko's. $1,500 Tom Ford ruined. Then she runs like, 'I said it's over.'" Adrian's tone could have frozen the rain mid-fall. "Get out of here, both of you, now." Something in his voice must have broken through the alcohol haze. Derek's sneer faltered. Mitchell took a step back, hands raised in mock surrender. "You're making a mistake," Derek muttered, but he was already backing away. Protecting trash like her. Adrian waited until they disappeared around the corner, their laughter echoing off wet buildings, before he turned. The woman was still crouched on the sidewalk, frantically shoving waterlogged papers into a portfolio case that had seen better days. Her hands were shaking so badly she kept dropping things. "They're gone," he said quietly, crouching down beside her. "You're safe." She flinched away from him, dark eyes wide and feral in a face too pale, too thin. Water streamed down her face. Rain, maybe tears, probably both. Her coat was soaked through, hanging heavy on narrow shoulders. "Don't!" Her voice came out hoarse. "Don't touch me." Adrian raised his hands slowly, palms out. "I won't. I'm just trying to help." "I don't need help." She grabbed another handful of papers, design sketches, he realized, detailed architectural drawings bleeding ink into the rain. "I don't need anything from anyone like you." "Anyone like me? Rich, powerful, thinking you can fix things by throwing money at them." She shoved the last sketch into her case and stood, wobbling slightly. One knee of her jeans was torn, bleeding through the denim. "I've had enough of men like you to last a lifetime." Adrian stood too, keeping his distance. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead, ran down the back of his neck. His $1,000 suit was probably ruined. He didn't care. "What happened at Rothko's?" he asked. She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Your friends cornered me in the coat room, decided they were entitled to more than just conversation. I defended myself with the nearest wine bottle." Her chin lifted, defiant despite the way her whole body was trembling. Worth every drop of their expensive Bordeaux. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest that had nothing to do with the weather. "Those men work for me, in my company. Congratulations. You hire predators." She turned to leave, limping on her injured knee. "Wait." He pulled off his suit jacket, held it out. "At least take this." "You're soaked." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding and hypothermic. There's a difference." When she didn't take the jacket, he draped it carefully over a parking meter between them. "My car's coming in 2 minutes. I can drop you somewhere dry." "I'd rather walk through hell in gasoline shoes." Despite everything, Adrian almost smiled. "That's vivid." "I'm a designer. Vivid is kind of my thing." She wrapped her arms around the portfolio case, protecting it like it contained something precious. "Look, I appreciate the white knight routine, but I've been taking care of myself for a long time. I don't need rescuing." "Everyone needs help sometimes." "Not from people who sign the paychecks of men like that." She nodded toward where Derek and Mitchell had disappeared. "How many others are there? How many times have they done this before?" The question hit harder than it should have. Adrian ran Kane Dynamics with ruthless efficiency. He knew every major contract, every acquisition, every stock fluctuation. But what happened in coat rooms at expensive restaurants? What happened after the networking dinners ended and the alcohol took over? He didn't know, and that ignorance felt suddenly unforgivable. "I'll find out," he said quietly, "and I'll handle it." Right, because that's what powerful men do. Handle things quietly, make problems disappear. She started walking, still limping. "Thanks, but no thanks. I've seen how that story ends." Adrian watched her go, something nagging at him. The way she moved, purposeful despite the pain, head up despite everything. The portfolio clutched so carefully, the defiance that burned even when she was shaking from cold and adrenaline. His phone buzzed. The car was here. He should let her go. Should climb into the warm leather interior and forget this night ever happened. Return to his carefully controlled existence where problems stayed contained and emotions stayed buried. Instead, he called out, "What's your name?" She stopped but didn't turn around. "Why?" "Because if I'm going to fire 2 senior executives, I should probably know who I'm doing it for." Now she did turn, suspicion sharp in her eyes. "You're not going to fire them. Men like you never do. You'll give them a warning, maybe a slap on the wrist, transfer them to a different department where they can prey on someone else. Try me." They stared at each other through the rain. She was maybe 5'4", dripping wet and shivering, probably weighed 120 pounds, soaking wet. But the way she looked at him, like she could see straight through the expensive suit and controlled exterior to something raw underneath, made Adrian feel more exposed than he had in years. "Lena," she finally said. "Lena Hart. Adrian Kane. I know who you are. Everyone knows who Adrian Kane is." She shifted the portfolio case, wincing.
The boy genius who built a tech empire before he was 30. The grieving widower who never dates, never smiles, never does anything except work and go home to his daughter. Adrian felt his jaw tighten. You've done your research. It's not research when it's in every business magazine for the last 5 years. Lena's expression softened slightly, though the wariness never left her eyes. Look, Mr. Kane, Adrian. Mr. Kane, she continued firmly, I appreciate what you did tonight, really. But I don't want to be some project for you to feel better about yourself. I don't want a job or charity or whatever it is you're already planning in that calculating CEO brain. I wasn't. Yes, you were. I can see it. You're already trying to figure out how to fix this, how to make it clean and manageable. She took a step closer, and despite her size, despite the shivering and the bleeding, she suddenly seemed taller than him. I'm not fixable, Mr. Kane. I'm not a business problem you can solve with the right strategy. The black car pulled up beside them, headlights cutting through the rain. The driver rolled down the window, looking concerned. Mr. Kane? Everything all right? Adrian didn't take his eyes off Lena. Give us a minute, James. Sir, you're getting soaked. A minute. The window rolled back up, but the car stayed idling, exhaust steaming in the cold air. Lena glanced at it, then back at Adrian, something unreadable crossing her face. Nice car, she said flatly. Must be convenient, never having to stand in the rain waiting for a bus. Well, I used to take the bus. The words came out before Adrian could stop them. Every day for 3 years while I was building my first startup. The number 36 from Rogers Park to the Loop. Know how many times it showed up on time? Maybe twice. Something shifted in Lena's expression. What changed? I got successful. Or lucky. Probably both. He ran a hand through his wet hair. I married someone who believed in me when I had nothing but student loans and an idea that might have been brilliant or might have been delusional. We built something together. Then she died, and suddenly all the success felt like winning a race nobody told me was rigged. Lena was quiet for a long moment. How long ago? 6 years. Your daughter must miss her. Evie was 2 when it happened. She doesn't remember her mother's voice anymore. Adrian felt the familiar ache spread through his chest. Sometimes I think that's worse than remembering. The rain eased slightly, from downpour to steady drumming. Lena shifted her weight, still favoring her good knee. Up close, Adrian could see her better now. Maybe mid-20s, dark hair plastered to her face, sharp cheekbones that suggested too many missed meals. But it was her eyes that struck him. Old eyes. Eyes that had seen things no one her age should have to see. What's in the portfolio? He asked, nodding toward the case she held. Nothing. Just some sketches. Can I see? Why? Because you protected them like they mattered more than your own safety. That makes me curious. Lena hesitated, then slowly unzipped the case. She pulled out a sheet, less waterlogged than the others, and held it where the car's headlights could illuminate it. Adrian stepped closer, studying the design. It was a building. Not just a building, a structure that seemed to breathe, all flowing lines and natural integration. Solar panels disguised as scales on a curved roof. Rainwater collection systems woven into the architecture like veins. Green spaces cascading down multiple levels. This is remarkable, he said quietly. Where is it? Nowhere. It doesn't exist. Lena's voice went flat again. It's just a dream project, something I work on when I can't sleep. You designed this? Don't sound so surprised. Poor people can be creative too. Adrian looked up sharply. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? But some of the edge had left her voice. She carefully slid the sketch back into the portfolio. Look, I should go. I've got a long walk ahead and my brother's probably freaking out wondering where I am. Let me drive you. No. Lena, I said no. She turned to leave, then paused, glancing back over her shoulder. But thank you. For tonight. For not being like them. Wait. Adrian pulled a business card from his wallet, held it out. If you change your mind about pressing charges, or if those two come near you again, call me. She stared at the card like it might bite her. I'm not calling you, Mr. Kane. Keep it anyway. For a moment he thought she'd refuse. Then she snatched the card, shoved it in her pocket without looking at it, and limped away into the rain. Adrian watched until she disappeared around a corner,
her small figure swallowed by shadows and storm. "Mr. Kane?" James called from the car. "Should we follow her? Make sure she gets somewhere safe?" Adrian climbed into the back seat, water pooling on the leather. "No, she'd hate that." "If you say so, sir." James pulled smoothly into traffic. "Home?" Adrian stared out the window at Chicago's nighttime landscape. Glass towers reflecting fractured light, streets still slick with rain. Somewhere out there, Lena Hart was walking alone, injured and soaked, carrying a portfolio full of dreams nobody had bothered to notice. "Actually," he heard himself say, "make a stop at the office first. I need to review some personnel files." James glanced in the rear-view mirror, surprised. "Tonight, sir? It's nearly 2 in the morning." "Tonight." Because the thing about being powerful, Adrian thought as the car sliced through empty streets, was that people assumed you knew everything happening under your watch. They assumed you had control, but control was an illusion, one he'd been maintaining for 6 years while grief slowly hollowed him out from the inside. Maybe it was time to stop pretending. The next morning arrived gray and cold, the kind of Chicago November day that made people question why they didn't live somewhere with actual sunshine. Adrian stood in his office on the 40th floor, phone pressed to his ear, watching rain streak down the windows. "I want them both gone by end of business today," he said quietly. "Derek Voss and Mitchell Chen. Full termination packages, but they're done." On the other end, his head of HR made nervous sounds. "Mr. Kane, with all due respect, we need documentation for something like this. A formal investigation. Both men have been with the company for over 8 years. Then investigate. I'll give you 48 hours. But I already know what you're going to find." Adrian's voice stayed calm, controlled. The coldest anger always did. "Check their expense reports. Cross-reference with complaints from junior staff, especially women. Look at the restaurants, the client dinners. Pattern behavior." A long pause. "You have specific information?" "I have enough." Adrian ended the call before she could ask more questions. He stood there for a moment, staring down at Michigan Avenue. People rushed along sidewalks, hunched against the wind, carrying coffee cups and briefcases. Normal morning routines, normal lives. His desk phone buzzed. "Mr. Kane, your 9 o'clock is here." "Right." Monday morning, senior staff meeting. The weekly ritual where everyone pretended to care about innovation while really just protecting their territories. Adrian grabbed his tablet, headed for the conference room, and tried to focus on quarterly projections instead of a pair of old eyes in a young face. The meeting dragged. Victor Hale, 32 years old and acting like he owned the company because his father controlled 15% of the shares, spent 20 minutes pontificating about market disruption without saying anything meaningful. Adrian's CFO droned through budget reports. Someone from marketing unveiled a campaign so generic it could have been for any tech company on the planet. Adrian tuned most of it out, offering comments when required, asking pointed questions that kept people on their toes. But his mind kept drifting back to last night, to the way Lena had looked at him like she could see through every carefully constructed wall. "Don't you think, Adrian?" He blinked, realizing Victor was staring at him expectantly. "Sorry, say that again?" "That." Victor's smile sharpened, something predatory in it. "I was just saying we should be more selective about who we let into Kane Dynamics. Quality over quantity. Can't have just anyone walking through our doors." Several people nodded. Adrian felt something cold settle in his gut. "Define anyone," he said quietly. "Oh, you know." Victor waved a manicured hand. "People without proper credentials. Street artists calling themselves designers. The kind who show up at industry events trying to network above their station." He leaned back in his chair, supremely confident. "Like that girl who made a scene at Rothko's last night. Absolutely embarrassing." The room went very still. Adrian set down his pen with deliberate care. "What girl?" "Some wannabe designer crashed the Art Institute fundraiser claiming she had sketches to show potential clients." Victor laughed, and several others joined in nervously. Security was about to remove her when she assaulted Derek and Mitchell, threw wine all over them like a crazy person. Adrian felt his jaw tighten. "That's your version of events?" "Well, yes. Derek called me right after. Said the girl was completely unhinged, probably on drugs or something." Victor's eyes glinted. People like that, they're just looking for attention or a lawsuit settlement. People like what exactly? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Victor's smile flickered. I just meant people without proper connections, without credentials. Lena Hart, Adrian said quietly, has more talent in one damaged sketch than most of our design department produces in a year. You could have heard a pin drop. I'm sorry, Victor said slowly. Are we talking about the same person? The one who defended herself against two drunk executives who cornered her in a coat room? Yes, that Lena Hart. Adrian stood, gathering his things. Meeting's over. Everyone out except Victor. The room emptied in 30 seconds flat. People practically fled, sensing blood in the water. The door clicked shut, leaving Adrian and Victor alone with 40 floors of glass and steel between them and the ground. Adrian, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Sit down. Victor sat. Adrian walked to the windows, hands in his pockets, staring out at the gray city. How long have you known me, Victor? Since I was a kid. Our fathers did business together. And in all that time, have I ever given you reason to think I tolerate predatory behavior in my company? That's not... Derek and Mitchell weren't... They cornered a woman half their size in a private room at a public event. When she defended herself, they chased her into the street. Adrian turned, and whatever Victor saw in his face made him sink lower in his chair. And your first instinct was to side with them, to mock her, to suggest she was somehow at fault. I didn't know you were there, Victor said weakly. That's the problem. You should care because it's wrong, not because I witnessed it. Victor stood, trying to salvage pride. Look, I'm sorry if I offended you, but you can't seriously be considering Derek and Mitchell are done. They'll be out by end of business. On the word of some random girl? Adrian, think about this. They bring in millions in revenue. Their contracts alone are worth less than basic human decency. Adrian's voice could have cut glass. And if you can't understand that, maybe you should reconsider whether Kane Dynamics is the right fit for you. Victor's face flushed red. My father. Your father is an investor, not an owner. And if he has a problem with how I run my company, he can sell his shares. Adrian moved toward the door, dismissing him. We're done here. You're making a mistake, Victor said, voice shaking with anger. That girl is nobody. She doesn't matter. Adrian stopped, hand on the door. Everyone matters, Victor. The day you learn, that might be the day you become half the man you think you already are. He walked out, leaving Victor standing alone in the conference room. 3 days later, Adrian sat in his office reviewing design proposals for the company's largest sustainability project, a $200 million development that would either cement Kane Dynamics as an industry leader or become a very expensive failure. None of the submissions impressed him. They all felt safe, predictable. His assistant knocked, poked her head in. Mr. Kane, there's someone here without an appointment. Says you gave her your card. Adrian looked up from his tablet. Name? Lena Hart. Something in his chest tightened. Send her in. A moment later, Lena appeared in the doorway, and Adrian barely recognized her. The soaked, defensive woman from the rainstorm was gone. In her place stood someone who'd clearly made an effort, dark jeans and a clean sweater, her hair pulled back, the portfolio case clutched against her side like armor. But the wariness in her eyes remained, along with a fading yellow bruise on her jaw he didn't remember seeing before. Mr. Kane. She didn't move past the threshold. I'm sorry to show up like this. I tried calling, but your assistant said you were in meetings all week. It's fine. Adrian gestured to the chair across from his desk. Please, sit. She perched on the edge of the seat, ready to bolt. I heard what you did, firing those men. News travels fast. This is Chicago. Everything travels fast. She set the portfolio case on her lap, fingers drumming nervously on the worn leather. People are saying you fired 2 senior executives over an incident with an unnamed woman. They're saying you're either having a breakdown or trying to make some political statement. Let them say what they want. Victor Hale is telling everyone I'm lying, that I'm just some con artist trying to extort money from powerful men. Adrian felt his jaw tighten. Victor Hale is a spoiled child who mistakes his father's money for his own worth. Despite everything, Lena almost smiled. That's going to make a great quote when this inevitably blows up in your face. Is that why you're here? To warn me? No. She unzipped the portfolio case, pulled out a stack of sketches. I'm here because I need a job, and apparently I'm crazy enough to ask the one person in Chicago who might actually hire me after word gets out that I'm the unnamed woman who destroyed 2 careers. She spread the sketches across his desk. Buildings, parks, transit systems, all rendered with the same flowing integration of nature and technology he'd seen that first night. Each design was more ambitious than the last, more innovative. Adrian studied them in silence, then looked up at her. Why me? Because you fired them. Because you could have protected your executives and made me disappear, but you didn't. Lena's voice stayed steady, but her hands shook slightly. And because I saw the project announcement for your sustainability development, and every single submission I've seen online is garbage. Strong words. True words. They're all just glass and steel with some token solar panels slapped on top. That's not sustainable architecture. That's just regular architecture with a green marketing spin. Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying her. And you can do better? I can do different. Whether it's better is up to you. She pulled out one more sketch, a design that took his breath away. A building that seemed to grow from the earth rather than sit on it, with living walls and integrated ecosystems and geometric patterns that somehow felt both ancient and futuristic. This, Lena said quietly, is what sustainable architecture should look like. Not just reducing harm, actually giving back. Adrian stared at the sketch for a long time. When he looked up, Lena was watching him with those old eyes, waiting for judgment. When can you start? He asked. Her breath caught. What? I'm offering you a position, contract work initially. 6 months to develop a full proposal for the sustainability project. He named a salary that made her eyes widen. If your design gets approved, we'll talk about something permanent. You're serious? I don't joke about contracts. Lena sat back, something like shock crossing her face. Why are you doing this? Because you're talented, because you're right about our current submissions, and because... Adrian paused, then decided honesty was the only option. Because I've spent 6 years running this company like an emotional fortress. Safe. Controlled. Completely removed from anything resembling actual human connection. And I'm tired of it. So I'm what, your redemption project? No. You're someone who showed me I stopped paying attention to what matters. He met her gaze evenly. But if you'd rather find work somewhere else, I understand. This is complicated, and it's only going to get more complicated when people start talking. Lena looked down at her sketches, spread across the mahogany desk like dreams made tangible. I have a brother. He's 16. I take care of him. Okay. I'll need flexible hours sometimes, for school meetings, that kind of thing. That's fine. And I don't do workplace politics. I don't smile at people who don't deserve it, and I won't pretend incompetence is genius just because someone's father owns company shares. Adrian felt the corner of his mouth lift. I wouldn't expect you to. She studied him for a long moment, searching for something. Deception, maybe, or ulterior motives. Adrian let her look, keeping his expression open. Finally, Lena nodded once, sharp and decisive. Okay, 6 months. But if you're doing this because you feel guilty or because you think I need saving, I'm out. Deal. She stood, gathering her sketches. I'll need workspace and access to the engineering team's models and someone who actually understands environmental impact systems. I'll have my assistant set it up. Lena moved toward the door, then paused. Mr. Kane? Adrian, he corrected. Adrian? She turned back, and for the first time since she'd walked in, she looked uncertain. Thank you for believing me. Most people don't. Most people are idiots. She smiled then, a real smile, small but genuine, and something in Adrian's chest cracked open. Some wall he'd been maintaining for 6 years suddenly didn't seem as necessary. I'll see you Monday, Lena said, and walked out. Adrian sat alone in his office for a long time after she left, staring at the spot where she'd been. Through the windows, Chicago spread out beneath him, gray and cold and unforgiving. But somewhere in that city, Lena Hart was probably walking home to her 16-year-old brother, carrying sketches that might change everything, or destroy it all. Adrian honestly wasn't sure which possibility scared him more. Lena's first day at Kane Dynamics started with a security badge that didn't work and a workspace that didn't exist. I'm sorry, Ms. Hart, but I don't have any record of your assignment. The facilities manager, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and the permanent expression of someone who'd given up on humanity, scrolled through his tablet with increasing irritation. No requisition forms, no space allocation, nothing.
Lena stood in the 40th floor hallway holding a box of supplies she'd bought herself. Sketch pads, pencils, a battered laptop that was one dropped call away from death, and tried not to let the familiar panic rise in her chest. Of course it was a mistake. Of course Adrian Kane had second thoughts over the weekend. Of course she'd been stupid enough to believe, there a problem here? She turned to find Adrian approaching, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, looking like he'd already been working for 3 hours despite it being barely 8 in the morning. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent, but his tie was slightly crooked and there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he slept about as well as she did. Mr. Kane, the facilities manager straightened immediately. I was just explaining to Miss Hart that we don't have her workspace assignment. Corner office, southeast side, the one that's been sitting empty since we restructured last quarter. Adrian didn't look up from his phone. Clear it out, set up a drafting table, and make sure she has access to the engineering server by noon. But, sir, that office is reserved for senior... By noon, Adrian repeated, finally meeting the man's eyes with a look that could freeze nitrogen. Is that going to be a problem? No, sir, of course not. The facilities manager disappeared so fast he practically left skid marks. Lena watched him go, then turned to Adrian. You didn't tell anyone I was coming. I told my assistant. She was supposed to handle the details. He finally looked at her properly, and something in his expression softened. I should have followed up. That's on me. A corner office is going to piss people off. People are already pissed off. Might as well give them something concrete to complain about. He gestured down the hallway. Come on, I'll show you where you'll be working. The office was bigger than Lena's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Lake Michigan, gray water stretching to a gray horizon. The furniture was minimal, a desk, empty bookshelves, a sad potted plant someone had abandoned, but the space itself felt full of possibility. Lena set her box down carefully, not quite believing this was real. It's too much, she said quietly. It's an office. It's a corner office on the executive floor. People are going to think... She stopped, not wanting to say it out loud. Adrian leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. They're going to think what they're already thinking, that you slept your way into a job, that I'm having some kind of crisis, that this is all going to blow up spectacularly. He shrugged. Let them think whatever helps them sleep at night. You really don't care what people say about you? I care about results. The rest is just noise. He checked his watch. I have a meeting in 10 minutes, but my assistant will get you set up with building access and system credentials. If you need anything, I'll figure it out. The words came out sharper than she intended. Lena forced herself to soften her tone. I mean, thank you, but I'm used to working things out on my own. Something unreadable crossed Adrian's face. I'm sure you are, but you don't have to anymore. He left before she could respond, and Lena stood alone in her too big office, staring out at the lake and wondering what the hell she'd gotten herself into. The answer came at lunch, when she ventured down to the 38th floor cafeteria and walked into a wall of hostile stares. The cafeteria was all glass and brushed steel, the kind of aggressively modern space designed to make eating feel like a productive business activity. Lena grabbed a sandwich, $7 for turkey and cheese, Jesus Christ, and looked for somewhere to sit that wouldn't require small talk. Every table was full, or at least every table suddenly became full the moment she approached. She finally found a spot in the corner near the windows, as far from other people as she could manage. The sandwich tasted like cardboard and corporate ambition. She forced herself to eat it anyway, keeping her eyes on her phone, pretending she didn't notice the whispers. Heard she just showed up and demanded a job. Sleeping with Kane, obviously. Why else would... Corner office on the executive floor. Can you believe... Lena's jaw tightened. She'd known this would happen, had prepared herself for it, even. But knowing and experiencing were two different animals, and this one had teeth. Mind if I sit? She looked up to find a woman about her age, late 20s, dark skin, perfectly tailored blazer, standing with a lunch tray and a smile that seemed genuine, or at least less hostile than everyone else. It's a free country, Lena said. Barely. The woman sat, extending a hand. Maya Reeves. I work in environmental impact assessment. which I'm guessing means we'll be seeing a lot of each other if you're really redesigning the sustainability project. Lena shook her hand cautiously. News travels fast. This is Kane Dynamics. News travels at light speed, truth travels at a crawl, and rumors move faster than both. Maya unwrapped her salad, $15 for lettuce and sadness, and speared a tomato. So which are you? News, truth, or rumor? Depends on who you ask. I'm asking you. Lena studied her for a moment, trying to gauge the angle. Everyone had an angle. I'm a designer Adrian hired to work on a project. That's it. Right. And I'm the Queen of England just stopping by for a salary. Maya's smile sharpened. Look, I don't care who you're sleeping with or not sleeping with. I care whether you actually know what you're doing, because if this project fails, it takes my entire department down with it. I know what I'm doing. Prove it. Show me your portfolio. Lena hesitated, then pulled out her tablet, opened the design files she'd compiled over the weekend. Maya studied them in silence, scrolling through page after page of sketches and renderings and technical specifications. Her expression gave nothing away. Finally, she looked up, and something like respect flickered in her eyes. Holy shit, she said quietly. You actually designed these? Why does everyone sound so surprised by that? Because most people with corner offices on the executive floor got there by kissing ass and playing politics, not by having actual talent. Maya scrolled back to a rendering of a vertical garden system. This integration here with the gray water recycling, how are you handling the bacterial growth in the filtration layers? And just like that, they were talking. Really talking, the way Lena hadn't talked to anyone about her work in months. Maya asked smart questions, pointed out potential engineering problems, suggested materials Lena hadn't considered. By the time lunch ended, Lena's notebook was full of sketches and calculations, and something tight in her chest had loosened slightly. You should meet the rest of my team, Maya said as they cleared their trays. Most of them are decent humans who care more about actual environmental impact than office politics. Most of them? Derek Thompson is an ass, but he knows his carbon modeling. Maya grinned. You'll figure out who to avoid quickly enough. Just stay away from anyone who hangs around Victor Hale, and you'll be fine. The mention of Victor's name made Lena's stomach tighten. He hates me. He hates everyone who threatens his position as Adrian's unofficial heir apparent. Maya lowered her voice as they walked back toward the elevators. Word of advice. Victor's dangerous, but he's predictable. He'll come at you directly, probably try to undermine your work or make you look incompetent in front of Adrian. Don't give him ammunition. Meaning? Meaning show up on time, hit your deadlines, and make your design so damn good he can't argue with the results. The elevator doors opened. Maya stepped in, held them for Lena. And maybe don't mention the whole unnamed woman who got 2 executives fired thing. Some people have guessed, but as long as it stays unofficial, Victor can't use it against you. The elevator climbed in silence for a moment. Then Lena said quietly, Thank you for sitting with me. Thank me by not screwing this up. I've been trying to push Kane Dynamics toward actual sustainability for 3 years. You might be the first person with enough talent and enough of Adrian's ear to make it happen. Maya's expression turned serious. Don't waste it. The doors opened on the 40th floor. Lena stepped out, then turned back. Maya? Why are you helping me? Because I'm tired of watching mediocre men fail upward while brilliant women have to fight for scraps. Maya smiled as the doors began to close. And because something tells me you're going to shake this place up in ways it desperately needs. Lena spent the rest of the afternoon setting up her workspace and trying to ignore the feeling of eyes on her every time she walked through the executive floor. By 6 o'clock, most people had left. The floor fell quiet except for the hum of climate control and the distant sound of cleaning crews working their way up from below. She was deep in a rendering of structural support systems when someone knocked on her doorframe. Working late on your first day. Impressive. Lena looked up to find Victor Hale leaning against her door, hands in the pockets of his expensive suit, smile sharp enough to cut. He looked like every entitled asshole she'd ever had the misfortune of dealing with. Too handsome, too confident, too used to getting exactly what he wanted. Just trying to catch up, she said carefully, saving her work. Catch up to what? You've been here one day. Victor strolled into her office without invitation, examining the space like he was cataloging everything that didn't belong.
Nice setup. Corner office, lake view, direct access to Adrian. Must be quite a change from wherever you were working before. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm sure you are. He picked up one of her sketch pads, flipping through it with casual disregard for personal boundaries. Adrian has a tendency to take on charity cases. Usually they don't last more than a few months before reality sets in. Lena stood, keeping the desk between them. I'm not a charity case. No? Then what are you exactly? Victor set down the sketch pad, eyes hard despite his smile. Because from where I'm standing, you're a nobody who showed up at the right place at the right time and convinced Adrian you're worth saving. Classic damsel in distress play. I didn't ask to be saved. Didn't you? He moved closer, and Lena fought the urge to back away. Adrian told me what happened at Rothko's, how you were cornered by Derek and Mitchell, how you defended yourself. Convenient story. It's what happened. Maybe. Or maybe you saw an opportunity and took it. Seduce a couple of drunk executives, cause a scene, wait for the white knight to show up. Victor's voice dropped, taking on an edge that made Lena's skin crawl. Adrian's been alone for 6 years. Grieving. Vulnerable. Perfect target for someone looking to upgrade their situation. Lena's hands curled into fists. Get out of my office. This isn't your office. It's Kane Dynamics' office. And I've been here a lot longer than you have. But Victor stepped back, adjusting his cuffs. Just a friendly warning, Lena. Adrian might believe your sob story, but I don't. And the moment you slip up, the moment you prove you're as mediocre as I think you are, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you really are. And what's that? A fraud. He smiled, cold and certain. Enjoy the corner office while it lasts. I give you 3 months before Adrian realizes his mistake. He walked out, leaving Lena alone with her racing heart and shaking hands. She forced herself to sit down, to breathe slowly, to not give him the satisfaction of seeing how much his words had landed. But they had landed, because under all the anger and defiance, a small voice whispered that maybe Victor was right. Maybe she was in over her head. Maybe this would all fall apart the moment people realized she was just a girl from nowhere pretending to belong somewhere that had never wanted people like her. Lena? She jerked her head up. Adrian stood in the doorway, concern creasing his forehead. I saw Victor leaving. He didn't... Adrian stopped, reading something in her expression. What did he say to you? Nothing important? Lena closed her laptop, started gathering her things. Just welcome to the company pleasantries. Lena. The way he said her name, quiet and careful, made something in her chest crack. She looked up, met his eyes, and found herself saying the truth before she could stop herself. He called me a fraud, said I seduced my way into this job and you were too lonely and vulnerable to see through it. Adrian's jaw tightened. I'll handle Victor. Don't. Lena stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. It'll just make it worse. He wants me to run to you for protection, wants to prove I can't fight my own battles. He's harassing you. He's testing me. There's a difference. She moved toward the door, but Adrian didn't step aside. I can handle Victor Hale. I don't doubt that, but you shouldn't have to. They stood too close in the doorway, close enough that Lena could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated, probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders that suggested he carried more weight than anyone should. Why are you still here? She asked quietly. It's almost 7. Don't you have a daughter waiting at home? Something painful flickered across Adrian's face. Evie's with her grandmother tonight. They have dinner together every Monday. So you just work late because there's nothing else to do? I work late because it's easier than going home to an empty apartment and pretending I know how to be alone without being lonely. The honesty in his voice made Lena's throat tighten. But you probably understand that better than most people. She did, better than she wanted to admit. I should go, she said. My brother's expecting me. Adrian stepped aside, but as she passed, he said, Lena, what Victor said, none of it's true. You're here because you're talented, because your designs are remarkable. That's all. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and walked toward the elevators. Behind her, she heard Adrian return to his office, heard the sound of his door closing. 2 lonely people in a building full of empty spaces, both pretending they were fine. The L train rattled through the city, carrying Lena south toward the neighborhood where she and Mateo rented a fourth-floor walk-up above a laundromat that made the whole building smell like fabric softener and broken dreams. She leaned her head against the window, watching Chicago blur past, streetlights and storefront signs, and people living their regular lives. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mateo. "Working late?" She typed back, "On my way home. Want pizza?" Always. Lena smiled despite everything. 16 years old, and Mateo still ate like he was storing calories for hibernation. Their mother used to joke that feeding him was like trying to fill a black hole with a spoon. Their mother. Dead 3 years now, overdosed in a motel room while Lena was working a shift at a coffee shop, and Mateo was supposedly at a friend's house, but was really shoplifting snacks from the corner store because they hadn't eaten in 2 days. Lena shoved the memory down deep where it belonged, along with all the other ugly truths about where she came from and what she'd survived to get here. The past was a sinkhole that swallowed everything if you stared at it too long. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it, small and clean and mostly empty. Mateo sat at their second-hand table doing homework, his dark hair falling in his eyes the way it always did when he needed a haircut they couldn't afford. He looked up when she came in, and the relief in his eyes was so naked it hurt. "Hey," he said, trying for casual and missing by a mile. "How was day one at the big fancy company?"
"Weird. People hate me."
Lena dropped her bag, headed for the kitchen. "But one person was nice, and the work is exactly what I hoped for, so I'm calling it a win." "Did the CEO guy hit on you?" "Mateo." "What? You said he was like grief-stricken and lonely. That's basically catnip for tragic single dads with hero complexes." He grinned at her expression. "I've seen the movies, Lena. I know how this story goes."
"This isn't a movie. It's a job."
She opened the fridge, almost empty, just like always, and made a mental note to go shopping now that she'd have actual paychecks coming in. "And Adrian Kane is my boss. That's it." "Adrian, huh? First name basis already." Lena threw a dish towel at his head. He caught it laughing. "I'm just saying, be careful. Rich people are different. They act like they care until it becomes inconvenient." Mateo's smile faded. "I don't want you getting hurt." "I'm not going to get hurt." "You always say that." "Because I'm always right." But lying in bed that night, staring at the water-stained ceiling while sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, Lena wondered if this time she might actually be wrong. Because Adrian Kane wasn't like the other rich people she'd dealt with. He was sadder, lonelier, more real somehow. And that made him infinitely more dangerous. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of 16-hour days and slowly building momentum. Lena threw herself into the sustainability project with everything she had, working until her eyes burned and her hand cramped around her stylus. Maya's team provided environmental data. Structural engineers ran feasibility studies, and slowly, impossibly, the design took shape. It was good. Better than good. It was the kind of work that could change how people thought about urban development, about humanity's relationship with the natural world. Every time Lena looked at the renderings, something fierce and proud swelled in her chest. Adrian stopped by her office most evenings, usually around 7 when the floor had emptied out. They'd talk about the project, about technical challenges and design philosophy, and the 100 small decisions that separated adequate work from exceptional. Sometimes they'd order food and eat while reviewing structural models. Sometimes Adrian would mention Evie, how she was struggling with math, how she'd asked why her dad never smiled anymore, how he didn't know how to explain grief to an 8-year-old who barely remembered what she'd lost. Lena started to understand that Adrian Kane wasn't just lonely. He was drowning in slow motion, surrounded by success that meant nothing because he had no one to share it with except a daughter who deserved better than a ghost for a father. She also started to understand that she looked forward to those evening conversations more than she should. That the sound of his footsteps in the hallway made her heart beat faster. That she'd started staying late, not just because of the work, but because going home meant not seeing him until tomorrow. Which was stupid and dangerous and exactly the kind of complication she'd promised herself she wouldn't allow. The confrontation came on a Thursday, 3 weeks into Lena's contract. She was presenting her preliminary designs to the senior leadership team, 15 people arranged around a conference table like judges at a trial, Victor Hale positioned directly across from her with a smile that promised blood. Adrian sat at the head of the table, expression neutral, giving nothing away. Lena had prepared for this, rehearsed answers to every possible question, stress-tested every assumption, built redundancies into her structural calculations. She knew this design inside and out, but Victor didn't attack the design. He attacked her. Before we dive into Ms. Hart's interesting proposal, he began, voice dripping false politeness, I think we should address some concerns about her qualifications. The room went very still. Adrian's eyes narrowed. What concerns? Adrian asked quietly. Victor pulled out a tablet, made a show of consulting it. Well, for starters, I can't find any record of Ms. Hart holding a degree in architecture or environmental design. No credentials from accredited universities, no professional certifications, no portfolio of completed projects. Lena felt her stomach drop. I'm self-taught. That doesn't mean self-taught. Victor seized on the words. So essentially, we're trusting a $200 million project to someone who learned architecture from YouTube videos? Nervous laughter rippled around the table. Lena's hands curled into fists beneath the table. My education doesn't change the quality of my work, she said evenly. Doesn't it? Because I also discovered something interesting about your previous employment. Victor's smile sharpened. You worked for Meridian Development Group until 18 months ago. Want to tell everyone why you left? Adrian leaned forward. Victor, this isn't a... I was fired, Lena said, cutting him off. If this was happening, she'd control the narrative. I discovered the senior partners were laundering money through fraudulent development contracts. I reported it to the authorities. They fired me and blacklisted me from the industry before the investigation could protect me. The room erupted in whispers. Victor looked delighted. So you're not just unqualified, he said. You're also a known troublemaker with a history of making accusations against employers. I made one accusation. It was true. 3 people went to prison. And yet here you are, making another accusation against Kane Dynamics employees. Victor stood, playing to the room now. Derek and Mitchell were terminated based solely on your word. No investigation, no due process, just Adrian taking the word of someone with a documented history of crying wolf. That's enough. Adrian's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Victor, sit down. I will not sit down while this company's reputation is being destroyed by someone who... Sit down. The command in Adrian's tone was absolute. Victor sat, jaw clenched, eyes burning with fury. Adrian stood, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate calm. Lena Hart's credentials are not up for debate. I hired her based on the quality of her work, which speaks for itself. As for her previous employment, I'm aware of what happened at Meridian. I'm also aware that she helped federal prosecutors build a case that exposed $40 million in fraudulent activity. He looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now. No one moved. Good. Now let's actually look at the designs we're here to discuss. Adrian nodded to Lena. Continue. Lena's hands shook as she pulled up her presentation, but her voice stayed steady. She walked them through every aspect of the design. The integrated water reclamation systems, the vertical gardens that served as both insulation and air filtration, the modular construction that reduced waste by 60%. She showed carbon modeling, cost projections, community impact assessments. By the time she finished, even the skeptical faces had softened into something like interest. Even Victor looked grudgingly impressed, though he'd never admit it. Questions? Lena asked. Maya raised her hand. The graywater system. Have you factored in maintenance costs over a 20-year life cycle? Yes. The savings in water bills offset maintenance by year 3. Another hand. What about building codes? Some of these vertical garden structures might not meet current regulations. I've been working with the City Planning Commission. They're willing to grant variances based on the environmental benefits. Question after question, and Lena had answers for all of them. Not perfect answers. The design still needed work, still had problems to solve, but good enough to prove she knew exactly what she was doing. Finally, Adrian spoke. Vote. Everyone in favor of moving forward with this design direction? Hands went up around the table. Slowly at first, then more confidently. Even Victor raised his hand, though it looked like it physically pained him. Unanimous, Adrian said. Lena, you have authorization to proceed to full development phase. Well done. The meeting ended.
People filed out, some stopping to congratulate Lena, others avoiding eye contact. Victor left without a word, his fury hanging in the air like ozone after lightning. Lena started gathering her materials, hands still shaking from adrenaline. She didn't realize Adrian had stayed behind until he spoke. "You handled that well." She looked up. They were alone in the conference room, 40 floors above the city, surrounded by glass and steel and the weight of everything that had just happened. "I almost lost it when he brought up Meridian," she admitted.
"But you didn't. You owned it, controlled the narrative." Adrian moved closer, and something in his expression made Lena's breath catch. "Victor was trying to destroy you in front of the entire leadership team. Instead, you made them believe in you." "Not all of them believe. Enough do. That's what matters." He hesitated, then said quietly, "I'm sorry I put you in that position. I should have anticipated Victor would go after your credentials. You can't protect me from everything. I can try." They stood too close again, the way they always seemed to end up. Close enough that Lena could see the flecks of gold in Adrian's gray eyes, could count the barely visible lines at the corners that suggested he used to smile more before grief carved them deeper. "Why do you care?" The question came out before she could stop it. "Really? Why does any of this matter to you?" "Any of this?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Because you remind me that it's possible to survive something terrible and still create something beautiful. And I'd forgotten that was possible." The honesty in his voice broke something open inside Lena's chest. She opened her mouth to respond, to say something equally honest and probably stupid, but the conference room door opened and Maya stuck her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but Lena, we need to talk about the carbon offset calculations before tomorrow's city planning meeting." The moment shattered. Adrian stepped back, sliding his professional mask back into place. "I'll let you two work," he said, and left without looking back. Lena watched him go, heart pounding, and wondered how much longer she could pretend this was just a job. The carbon offset meeting ran until midnight, and by the time Lena stumbled out of the conference room, her brain felt like it had been put through a blender. Maya had left 2 hours earlier, apologizing but citing an actual life to get back to. Lena had stayed, running calculations until the numbers blurred together, because going home meant thinking about the way Adrian had looked at her, and thinking about that felt more dangerous than exhaustion. The 40th floor sat empty and dark except for security lighting. Her footsteps echoed too loud on polished floors as she headed for her office to grab her bag. Through the windows, Chicago glittered like scattered diamonds, beautiful and cold and utterly indifferent to the small human dramas playing out in its towers. She was halfway to the elevator when she noticed light spilling from Adrian's office. Lena told herself to keep walking, told herself that whatever was happening between them, this pull, this recognition, this feeling like she'd found someone who understood what it meant to survive when staying alive hurt more than dying, was a complication neither of them could afford. She knocked on his door anyway. Adrian looked up from his laptop, surprise flickering across his face before settling into something warmer. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves. There was a coffee mug on his desk that had probably been full hours ago, now just dregs and exhaustion. "You're still here," he said. "So are you." "I live here most nights. What's your excuse?" Lena leaned against the doorframe, too tired to maintain proper professional distance. "Carbon calculations. Maya thinks my offset projections are too optimistic. She's probably right." "Maya's usually right. It's annoying." Adrian closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. "You look exhausted." "You look like you haven't slept in a week. Try 6 years." He said it like a joke, but the truth underneath cut deep. "Evie's at her grandmother's again tonight. Some school project they're working on. I'm supposed to be grateful for the help, but mostly I just feel guilty that my mother-in-law sees my daughter more than I do." Lena moved into the office without being invited, dropping into the chair across from his desk. "Why don't you just leave earlier? You own the company. You can set your own hours." "Because leaving means going home. And home is just a place where I'm reminded of everything I'm failing at." Adrian rubbed his eyes, the gesture weary. "At least here I'm productive. Useful. Here I can pretend the work matters enough to justify the absence." "Does Evie see it that way?" The question landed harder than Lena intended. Adrian flinched. "No," he said quietly. "She asked me last week if I still loved her. 8 years old, and she's wondering if her father cares because I'm never there for dinner, never there for bedtime, never there, period, except on weekends when I try to cram all my parenting into 48 hours, and wonder why it feels forced. Lena's chest tightened. What did you tell her?
That of course I loved her. That everything I did was for her. He laughed, bitter. Classic absent father excuse, right? I'm working hard to give you a good life when what she actually wants is just me, present, paying attention, not treating her like another item on my schedule between board meetings. So change it. It's not that simple.
It never is, but that doesn't make it impossible. Lena leaned forward, elbows on her knees. You want to know what my brother asked me last week? He asked if I was going to leave him like Mom did. Not die. Leave. Because I'm working so much lately that he thinks I'm looking for an excuse to bail. Adrian's expression shifted. I know it's not true. You know it's not true. But Mateo's 16 and scared, and he's watched every adult in his life disappear one way or another. Her throat felt tight. So yeah, I get it. I get the guilt and the exhaustion and the feeling like you're failing everyone, including yourself. But our kids don't need perfection, Adrian. They just need us to show up. The silence stretched between them, heavy with truths neither of them wanted to examine too closely. Outside, a plane's lights blinked across the night sky, carrying people to places that probably felt just as complicated as right here. When's the last time you had dinner with Evie on a weeknight? Lena asked. Adrian had to think about it. 3 weeks ago? Maybe 4? When's the last time you asked about her day and actually listened to the answer instead of checking your phone?
He stopped. I don't remember.
Then maybe that's where you start. Not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, just being there. Actually there. Not just physically present while your brain runs through tomorrow's meetings. Adrian studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. How did you get so wise about parenting when you're barely older than a kid yourself? I'm 24, not 12. And I learned by watching my mother do everything wrong. The words came out harsher than Lena intended. She chose drugs over us every single time. Chose getting high over keeping us fed, keeping us safe, keeping us period. So when she died, I promised myself Mateo would never feel that kind of abandonment again. But you're scared you're breaking that promise.
Every single day. Lena's voice cracked. I'm terrified I'm turning into her. Different addiction, maybe, work instead of drugs, but same result. Mateo home alone wondering if I care enough to show up. Adrian stood, moving around the desk to lean against it, closer to her now. You're nothing like that. You're here breaking yourself into pieces, trying to build a better life for him. And you're doing the same for Evie. But we're both so busy building that we're forgetting to actually live. She looked up at him, and the exhaustion in his eyes mirrored something in her own chest. When does it get easier? When do we get to stop running so hard we can't breathe? I don't know. I keep hoping I'll figure it out. He reached out, then seemed to catch himself, hand falling back to his side. But talking to you helps. These conversations, they're the only time I feel like I'm not drowning alone. The air between them shifted, charged with something neither of them could name. Lena should stand up, should leave, should maintain the professional boundaries that were already blurrier than they should be. Instead, she said, I should go. It's late. Stay. Adrian's voice was quiet. Just for a few more minutes, please. So she stayed. They talked about nothing and everything, about Evie's obsession with astronomy, about Mateo's terrible taste in music, about the way grief changed shape over time but never really left. They talked until the sky outside started shifting from black to deep blue, until the first commuters began trickling into the building below. When Lena finally left, the sun was rising over Lake Michigan, painting the water gold and pink. She rode the train home in dawn light, exhausted and confused and feeling more alive than she had in months. The breakthrough on the sustainability project came 2 weeks later, but the breakthrough in Lena's carefully controlled life came the same night, and she wasn't prepared for either. She'd been working late again, shocking no one, when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Is this Lena Hart? Male voice, official tone. Never good. Who's asking? Officer Martinez with Chicago PD. We have a Mateo Hart here at the station. He listed you as his guardian. Lena's world tilted. What happened? Is he hurt? He's fine, but he was picked up for shoplifting at a convenience store on Western. We need you to come down and sign for his release. The train ride to the police station was the longest 20 minutes of Lena's life. Her brain kept cycling through worst-case scenarios. Mateo arrested, Mateo with a record, Mateo taken away because she'd failed to keep him safe, failed to be enough, failed the one job that actually mattered. The station smelled like stale coffee and institutional cleaning products. Mateo sat on a bench in the lobby, looking small and young and terrified despite the defiant set of his jaw. When he saw Lena, something in his face crumpled. She wanted to yell at him, wanted to demand what the hell he'd been thinking. Instead, she just pulled him into a hug and felt him shake against her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Officer Martinez appeared, clipboard in hand, expression more tired than angry. "First offense, minor theft. Store owner's not pressing charges. But he's got a file now. Next time won't be so easy." Lena signed the paperwork with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. They walked out into the night, and she made it 3 blocks before she had to stop, leaning against a building while her breath came in gasps that had nothing to do with the pace. "Lena?" Mateo's voice was small. "Are you okay?" "Am I okay?" "Mateo, you were arrested. They could have... She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't voice all the fears screaming in her head. "I know. I'm sorry." He stared at his shoes, hands shoved deep in his pockets. "I just wanted snacks for movie night. We haven't done movie night in weeks, and I thought if I got your favorite candy, you'd want to stay home instead of working late again." The words hit like a physical blow. "You stole because you missed me?" "I stole because we're broke, and I'm tired of pretending we're not." His voice cracked. "You're working all these hours at that fancy job, and we still can't afford anything. Still eating ramen, still behind on rent, still one bad month away from being on the street. So what's the point?" "The point is that I'm building something, a real career, a way out." "A way out for who?" "Because it feels like you're just working yourself to death while I'm still here eating dollar store pasta and lying to teachers about why I can't afford the field trip fees." Mateo's eyes were wet. "You're turning into her, Lena. Mom worked all the time too. Different jobs, same excuse. Always next month, always next year, always tomorrow we'd have enough." "I am nothing like her." "No. Then why do I feel just as alone as I did when she was getting high in the bathroom?" Lena felt something break inside her chest. "That's not fair." "Neither is this. Neither is watching you kill yourself for a job that's going to chew you up and spit you out the second you're not useful anymore." Mateo wiped his eyes angrily. "Your boss doesn't care about you. None of them do. They're just using you until they get bored." "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know rich people, Lena. I know how this works. They'll let you think you matter right up until you don't, and then you'll be back where we started, except more broken." He started walking again, shoulders hunched. At least Mom was honest about her addiction. The accusation hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Lena followed in silence, her mind spinning. When they got home, Mateo went straight to his room and shut the door. She stood in their tiny kitchen, staring at the empty fridge, and finally let herself cry. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "Still at the office?" She stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed, "Had a family emergency. I'm home." The response came immediately. "Everything okay?" Lena's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Everything was not okay. Everything was falling apart. But admitting that to Adrian felt like admitting failure, and she'd spent her whole life proving she didn't fail. "Fine," she typed. "Just need some sleep." She didn't sleep. She sat on her fire escape watching the city breathe, thinking about Mateo's words. Thinking about the way she'd been throwing herself into work, like it could save her from all the ways she was falling short. Thinking about Adrian's exhausted eyes and Evie's question about whether her father still loved her. Thinking about how easy it was to lose the people you loved while you were busy trying to build something worth loving you for. The shareholder gala was in 3 days, and Lena had never felt less prepared for anything in her life. The gala was Kane Dynamics' biggest event of the year. 400 guests, millions in investments on the line, every major player in Chicago's tech and development circles packed into the ballroom of the Four Seasons. It was also where Lena would be presenting her sustainability project to the people who'd actually fund it, which meant the last 2 months of work either paid off spectacularly or failed publicly. Maya had tried to prepare her. Just remember, these people care about 2 things, making money
and looking good while doing it. Show them how your design does both, and they'll throw funding at you. But Lena's stomach was in knots for reasons that had nothing to do with the presentation. She'd barely spoken to Matteo in 3 days. He'd apologized for shoplifting, promised never again, but the distance between them felt wider than ever. And she'd been avoiding Adrian since that night at the police station, unable to shake Matteo's accusation that she was becoming obsessed. The morning of the gala, Adrian cornered her in her office. "You've been avoiding me," he said, without preamble.
Lena didn't look up from her laptop. "I've been busy." "Bullshit. What happened?" "Nothing that concerns you." Adrian closed her office door, moved to stand in front of her desk where she couldn't ignore him. "Lena, talk to me." "There's nothing to talk about. I had a family issue, I handled it, it's done." "Is it?" "Because you look like you haven't slept in 3 days and you're about to present the most important project of your career while barely holding it together." The concern in his voice made something in Lena's chest crack. "I'm fine." "Stop lying." Adrian's tone softened. "Please, whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone." That broke her. Lena looked up, met his eyes, and felt all the walls she'd been maintaining crumble. "My brother was arrested for shoplifting. He did it because he missed me. Because I've been spending so much time here that he felt abandoned, and instead of talking to me about it, he stole candy for a movie night we don't have time for anymore." Adrian's expression shifted. "Lena." "He called me an addict. Said I'm no better than our mother because I'm choosing work over him." Her voice cracked. "And the worst part is he's right. I'm so obsessed with proving I deserve to be here, with making this project perfect, that I've been neglecting the one person who actually matters." "That's not true." "Isn't it? When's the last time I made him dinner? When's the last time I asked about his day and actually listened? I've become exactly what I promised I'd never be." Tears burned in Lena's eyes. "And now he thinks your world is going to destroy me, and I can't even tell him he's wrong because I don't know if he is." Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he moved around the desk, pulled her to her feet, and wrapped his arms around her. Lena stiffened, then collapsed against his chest, letting herself be held for the first time in longer than she could remember. "You're not your mother," Adrian said quietly into her hair. "You're someone who cares so much she's breaking herself trying to give her brother a better life. That's not addiction. That's love. Love that's hurting him. Then adjust. Find balance. But don't convince yourself you're failing when you're actually fighting harder than anyone should have to." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "And don't convince yourself this world is going to destroy you. You're stronger than that." "Am I?" "You survived things that would have broken most people. You built something extraordinary from nothing. You stood in front of a room full of skeptics and made them believe." His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing away tears. "You're the strongest person I know, Lena. Don't let fear make you forget that." The moment stretched between them, charged and fragile. Lena became aware of how close they were standing, how Adrian's hands felt against her skin, how easy it would be to close the distance, and she stepped back. "I should finish the presentation." Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or relief, before his professional mask slid back into place. "Right. The presentation." "Adrian, it associate. It's fine. You're right. We both have work to do." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Matteo's wrong about one thing. This world isn't going to destroy you. But if you're not careful, you might destroy yourself trying to prove you belong in it." He left before Lena could respond. She stood alone in her office, heart racing, and wondered how much longer she could keep pretending this was just about work. The ballroom glittered like something from a movie Lena couldn't afford to watch. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across marble floors. Women in gowns that cost more than her annual rent laughed at jokes that probably weren't funny. Men in tuxedos discussed mergers and acquisitions like they were trading baseball cards instead of people's livelihoods. Lena stood near the presentation area in the only formal dress she owned, a simple black number she'd bought secondhand 3 years ago, and tried not to feel like an imposter at her own success. Maya had coached her through the setup, made sure the digital displays were working, run through the presentation notes one more time. "You've got this," Maya said, squeezing her arm. "Just breathe and remember they need this project more than you need their approval." Lena nodded,
not trusting her voice. Across the room, she spotted Adrian talking to a group of investors, looking devastatingly handsome in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her car. He caught her eye and smiled, small, private, meant just for her, and Lena felt her heart do something complicated. Then Victor Hale appeared at her elbow, champagne in hand, smile sharp enough to cut. "Big night," he said conversationally. "Lot of pressure on those delicate shoulders." "I can handle it." "Can you?" "Because I've been hearing some interesting rumors." Victor sipped his champagne, eyes glittering with malice. "About your previous employer, about why you were really fired." Lena's stomach dropped. "I told everyone what happened at Meridian." "You told them your version, very heroic, very noble, but I did some digging, talked to some people who actually worked there." His smile widened. "Want to know what they told me?" "Not particularly." "They said you hacked into confidential files, that you accessed financial records you had no authorization to see, that when you got caught, you made up a story about money laundering to cover your tracks." "That's a lie, is it?" "Because I have emails suggesting you were fired for corporate espionage, not whistleblowing. That the only reason charges weren't filed is because Meridian didn't want the publicity." Victor leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw your presentation tonight. You're going to tell Adrian you need more time, and then you're going to quietly resign before I share this information with everyone in this room." Lena's hands curled into fists. "No." "No? I'm not withdrawing anything, and I'm not resigning." She met his eyes, refusing to back down. "Whatever lies you think you found, they don't change the fact that my design is brilliant, and you know it." Victor's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake. The only mistake I'm making is wasting time talking to you." Lena turned away, heart pounding, and walked toward the presentation area on legs that felt like water. She had 15 minutes before she was supposed to start. 15 minutes to pull herself together and deliver the most important presentation of her life while Victor circled like a shark waiting for blood in the water. Maya appeared at her side. "You okay? You look pale." Victor knows about Meridian, the real story, or at least his version of it. "Shit. Is he going to—" "I don't know, but I'm not backing down." Maya gripped her hand. "Good. Because that design deserves to be seen, and anyone who can't separate your past from your talent can go to hell." The lights dimmed. Someone tapped a microphone. Lena's cue to take the stage. She walked to the front of the room, feeling hundreds of eyes on her, and tried to remember how to breathe. "Good evening," she began, voice steadier than she felt. "Thank you for being here. Tonight I'm going to show you the future of sustainable urban development." The presentation unfolded like a dream. Lena walked them through every aspect of the design, the integrated ecosystems, the carbon-negative construction, the community impact. The digital displays showed renderings that took people's breath away, technical specifications that proved this wasn't just beautiful, but achievable. She was halfway through when Victor stood up in the middle of the crowd. "I have a question," he called out, loud enough to cut through her presentation. "About your qualifications to be presenting this." The room went silent. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. "This isn't the Q&A portion," she said carefully. "I think the investors deserve to know who they're trusting with $200 million. Victor's voice carried to every corner of the ballroom. "Specifically, they deserve to know about your history of corporate espionage." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lena saw Adrian start forward, but Victor was already continuing, playing to the room like an actor who'd rehearsed this moment. Lena Hart was fired from Meridian Development Group for hacking confidential files and accessing proprietary information without authorization. She then fabricated a story about financial crimes to cover her illegal activities. Victor pulled out his phone, held it up. "I have documentation. Emails from Meridian's legal team discussing potential criminal charges that were only dropped to avoid negative publicity." The ballroom erupted. Investors whispered to each other, looking at Lena with suspicion. Cameras flashed. Someone had tipped off the press. Of course they had. Adrian was pushing through the crowd toward her, but he was too far away and Victor was still talking. "So my question is this. Why should anyone trust Kane Dynamics when you're employing someone with a documented history of corporate theft and deception?" Lena stood frozen at the front of the room, her presentation forgotten on the screens behind her, her entire career imploding in real time. This was it.
The moment everything fell apart. The moment she proved Matteo right about not belonging in this world. Then Adrian's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Because I trust hers.
Adrian reached the front of the ballroom in 10 strides, his presence commanding enough that the crowd parted instinctively. He took the microphone from Lena's numb fingers, his expression carved from ice as he turned to face 400 of Chicago's most powerful people. I trust her, he repeated, voice carrying to every corner of the room. And since I'm the one writing the checks for this project, that's the only opinion that matters. Victor's confidence faltered. Adrian, if you just look at the evidence, I've seen the evidence, all of it, including the federal prosecution files that prove Lena Hart helped convict 3 senior executives of embezzling $40 million. Adrian's tone could have stripped paint. The same files that show Meridian Development Group attempted to intimidate her into silence by threatening criminal charges they knew wouldn't stick. He moved to stand beside Lena, a united front against the room's judgment. What Victor is calling corporate espionage, the FBI called cooperating with an investigation. What he's calling deception, federal prosecutors called bravery. Adrian paused, letting the words sink in. So yes, Lena accessed files without authorization. She did it because she discovered her employers were stealing millions from the city's affordable housing fund. She did it because it was the right thing to do, and she paid for that choice with her career. The ballroom was silent now. Cameras still flashed, but the hostile energy had shifted into something more uncertain. But let's talk about qualifications since Victor brought it up. Adrian's voice took on an edge that made several investors flinch. Lena Hart designed a sustainability project that reduces carbon emissions by 70%, creates 2,000 construction jobs, and generates community green space in neighborhoods that haven't seen investment in decades. She did it in 8 weeks. With no formal degree and a fraction of the resources our overpaid design department wastes quarterly. He gestured to the screens behind them, where Lena's rendering still glowed. That building will change how this city thinks about development. It'll win awards, attract international attention, and prove Kane Dynamics actually gives a damn about more than profit margins. Adrian's eyes swept the room, landing on each major investor in turn. So if anyone has a problem with Lena Hart's qualifications, there's the door. We'll build it without you. No one moved. Victor's face had gone white with fury, but he sat down slowly, recognizing defeat when it cornered him. Adrian handed the microphone back to Lena. Their fingers touched briefly, and the contact sent electricity through her shaking hands. Finish your presentation, he said quietly, meant only for her. Show them what you built. Lena looked out at the sea of faces, some sympathetic now, some still suspicious, all of them waiting to see what she'd do next. She could run, could let Victor's attack destroy her, could prove Matteo right about not belonging in this world, or she could finish what she started. She lifted the microphone, forcing her voice steady. As I was saying before the interruption, this is the future of sustainable development, and if you're brave enough to build it, it'll change everything. The rest of the presentation passed in a blur of technical details and investor questions. By the time Lena finished, her hands had stopped shaking and her voice had found its strength. The applause when she concluded felt genuine, no longer just polite obligation. Investors swarmed her afterward, asking questions about timeline and implementation. Maya materialized at her side, fielding the technical inquiries Lena's exhausted brain couldn't process. Somewhere in the chaos, Adrian disappeared, pulled away by his own crowd of shareholders demanding explanations. Victor was nowhere to be seen. It was past midnight when Lena finally escaped to the hotel's exterior terrace, desperately needing air that didn't smell like expensive cologne and champagne. Rain had started falling. Of course it had, because Chicago couldn't let a night this emotionally destructive happen without weather to match. She stood at the railing, letting cold drops soak through her dress, and tried to process what had just happened. Victor had tried to destroy her in front of everyone who mattered, and Adrian had defended her so completely, so publicly, that there was no going back to pretending this was just a professional relationship. You're going to catch pneumonia. Lena turned to find Adrian standing in the terrace doorway, tuxedo jacket in hand. He crossed the space between them and draped it over her shoulders without asking permission. Seems to be a pattern with us, she said. You finding me soaked and miserable. You're not miserable. You're processing. He leaned against the railing beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. That was brutal in there. Yeah, but you didn't run. You finished. Because you gave me a choice. Lena pulled his jacket tighter around herself. It smelled like him. Expensive cologne and something uniquely Adrian underneath. You could have let Victor destroy me. Should have, probably. Would have been easier than staking your reputation on someone you barely know. I know you well enough. Do you? Because sometimes I think you see who you want me to be instead of who I actually am. Adrian was quiet for a moment, staring out at rain-slicked Chicago. Who do you think you are? A fraud, an imposter, someone who got lucky and is desperately trying to fake it until everyone realizes I don't belong. The words tumbled out, raw and honest. Victor's right about one thing. I don't have credentials. I taught myself architecture from library books and YouTube videos. I've never finished anything significant before this project. And I'm terrified that one day you're going to wake up and realize you made a mistake hiring me. Lena, I'm not finished. She turned to face him fully. You defended me in there like I was worth fighting for, like I mattered more than your investors' opinions or your company's reputation. And I don't understand why. I don't understand what you see in me that makes any of this worth the risk. The rain fell harder, drumming against concrete. Adrian studied her face like he was memorizing it. You want to know what I see? His voice was quiet, almost lost under the storm. I see someone who's been fighting her entire life and somehow hasn't lost her capacity to care. Someone who could have taken the easy path 1,000 times, but chose integrity every single time, even when it cost her everything. He moved closer, and Lena's breath caught. I see someone who reminds me what it feels like to be alive instead of just surviving. Someone who makes me want to be better than the hollow version of myself I've been for 6 years. Adrian's hand came up to brush wet hair from her face. I see someone who terrifies me because caring about her means risking the kind of pain I swore I'd never let myself feel again. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. Adrian, we can't. Isha. I know. You work for me. It's complicated. It's inappropriate. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Doesn't make it less true. The space between them disappeared. Lena wasn't sure who moved first. Maybe both of them. Maybe neither. Maybe the universe just stopped fighting the inevitable. His lips found hers and everything else fell away. The rain, the gala, Victor's attack, all of it dissolved into the feeling of Adrian's hands in her hair and the taste of champagne on his mouth and the desperate, aching relief of finally stopping the pretense that this was only professional. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he said. The worst, Lena agreed. It'll complicate everything. Probably destroy both our careers. We should stop. Definitely. But neither of them moved. They stood there in the rain, wrapped in each other, and Lena felt something in her chest crack open, something that had been locked tight since her mother died, since she'd learned that loving people meant watching them disappoint you. Adrian's phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again, insistent. You should check that, Lena said quietly. He pulled back reluctantly, checking the screen. His expression shifted from soft to sharp in an instant. What's wrong? Victor just sent an email to the entire board. Adrian's jaw tightened as he read. He's calling an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Claims I'm compromised, emotionally unstable, making decisions based on personal attachment rather than business judgment. Because of me. Because he's desperate and dangerous, and I've been underestimating him. Adrian looked up from his phone, something fierce in his eyes. He's going to try to force a vote of no confidence. Try to remove me as CEO. Lena felt cold that had nothing to do with the rain. Can he do that? If he gets enough board members on his side? Yes. Adrian ran a hand through his wet hair. His father controls 15% of shares. Between their allies and the investors I just pissed off by defending you, then don't defend me. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them I manipulated you. The words tasted like ash, but Lena forced them out anyway. Fire me, publicly. Make it clear I mean nothing to you. No. Adrian, you'll lose everything. I don't care. His voice was steel. I spent 6 years building walls around myself, playing it safe, avoiding risk, protecting what I had left. And it made me miserable. It made Evie miserable. He gripped her shoulders. I'm not sacrificing you to save a position I'm not even sure I want anymore. That's insane. Kane Dynamics is your life. No, it's my job.
There's a difference. Adrian's expression softened. You helped me remember that. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to convince him not to throw away everything he'd built for someone like her. But the look in his eyes stopped her. She'd seen that look before. In the mirror, every time she'd chosen Mateo over her own survival, it was the look of someone who'd finally found something worth fighting for. What do we do? She asked quietly. We go to that board meeting tomorrow. We make our case, and we accept whatever happens. He pulled her close again. Together. The words settled into Lena's chest like a promise. Together. Not alone. Not fighting separate battles in separate corners. Together. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first solid ground she'd stood on in years. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 the next morning. Lena barely slept, running through scenarios and arguments, trying to prepare for a fight she wasn't sure could be won. Around 3 a.m., she gave up and went to check on Mateo. He was awake too, sitting in the dark scrolling through his phone. When Lena knocked softly on his door, he looked up with red-rimmed eyes. Can't sleep either, she asked. Saw the videos from the gala. They're all over social media. Mateo held up his phone, showing a clip of Victor's attack and Adrian's defense. You're kind of famous now, in a bad way. Yeah. Lena sat on the edge of his bed. Listen, about what you said about me turning into Mom. I'm sorry. I was angry and scared and it came out wrong. Mateo set down his phone. You're nothing like her. I know that. I miss you, Lena. I miss having a sister who's actually here. I miss being here. Her throat felt tight. I got so caught up in proving I deserved that job that I forgot why I wanted it in the first place. To build a better life for us. But what's the point if I'm never around to actually live it with you? Mateo was quiet for a moment. Then, is it true? What that guy said about you hacking files? Yeah, it's true. And the guy who defended you, your boss, are you guys... He trailed off, but the question hung clear in the air. Lena thought about lying, thought about maintaining professional boundaries and appropriate distance. Then she remembered standing in the rain with Adrian, remembered the feeling of finally letting someone past her walls. I don't know what we are, she said honestly. But yeah, there's something there. He seems okay, for a rich guy. Mateo picked at his blanket. You really think he's going to choose you over his company? I hope not. I hope he comes to his senses and realizes I'm not worth destroying everything he built. But what if he doesn't? Lena met her brother's eyes. Then I guess we figure out what comes next. Same way we always do. Mateo nodded slowly. Then he threw his arms around her, hugging her tight the way he used to when he was small and the world felt too big and she was the only solid thing in it. Don't let them make you small, he said into her shoulder. You're the bravest person I know. Don't forget that tomorrow. Lena held him close and tried not to cry. When did you get so wise? Learned from the best. The Kane Dynamics boardroom felt like a courtroom. 23 board members sat around an enormous table, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Victor sat at one end looking confident and cold. Adrian sat at the other, and Lena stood beside him because he'd insisted she had every right to be present for a meeting called about her. Victor's father, Edward Hale, steel-haired and steel-eyed, called the meeting to order with the warmth of a hanging judge. We're here to discuss Adrian Kane's recent decisions regarding company leadership and personnel choices that several board members feel demonstrate poor judgment. Edward's gaze flicked to Lena like she was something unpleasant on his shoe. Specifically, the hiring of Lena Hart despite significant concerns about her background and qualifications. Those concerns were addressed publicly last night, Adrian said evenly. Were they? Because from where I'm sitting, you staked this company's reputation on defending someone you've known for 2 months. Someone with no credentials, no portfolio of completed work, and a history of legal issues with previous employers. Edward leaned forward. That's not sound business judgment, Adrian. That's emotional compromise. I made a business decision based on merit and results. Lena's design is the best submission we've received in 3 years. A design that hasn't been built. That exists only on paper. Victor spoke up, voice sharp. You're risking $200 million and countless investor relationships on sketches made by someone who learned architecture from internet videos. Those sketches represent innovation this company hasn't seen since I founded it, Adrian countered. And they're backed by sound engineering and environmental science.
They're backed by nothing except your personal feelings for Ms. Hart. Edward's words landed like stones. Which brings us to the real issue, your relationship with her. The room went silent. Lena felt every eye turned toward them. There is no relationship, Adrian said carefully.
Please, you defended her like she was family, threatened our investors, publicly humiliated my son. Edward's expression hardened. We all know what's happening here, Adrian. You're lonely, you're grieving, and Ms. Hart recognized an opportunity. That's not, Lena started, but Adrian touched her hand beneath the table, a silent request for restraint. My personal life is irrelevant to my ability to lead this company. Is it? Because your personal life has been interfering with business decisions for months now, firing Derek and Mitchell without proper investigation, giving Ms. Hart resources and access far beyond what a contract employee should receive, alienating valuable investors to protect someone who means more to you than she should. Edward stood, commanding the room. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in Adrian Kane's leadership. All in favor? Hands went up around the table. Lena counted them, her heart sinking. 7, 8, 10. Opposed? More hands. 9, 10, 11. Abstentions? 2 hands. Edward tallied the results, and something that might have been satisfaction flickered in his eyes. The motion fails. But barely, Adrian. This board is split on your leadership. That's not a position of strength. I understand. Do you? Because I'm not finished. Edward settled back into his chair. The board will allow you to remain CEO under the following conditions. Ms. Hart is terminated immediately. The sustainability project is put out for competitive bidding with proper vetting of all designers, and you undergo a professional evaluation to ensure you're fit to continue leading this company. The words hit like physical blows. Lena felt Adrian tense beside her. Those aren't conditions, Adrian said quietly. That's a coup dressed up as concern. That's the board protecting its investment. Edward's voice was cold. You have until end of business today to comply. Otherwise, we'll reconvene this meeting with a motion to remove you entirely. Adrian stood slowly. I need time to consider. You have 3 hours. Edward checked his watch. We'll reconvene at noon for your decision. The meeting dissolved. Board members filed out, some avoiding eye contact, others looking almost sympathetic. Victor left with his father, triumph written across his face. Lena and Adrian stood alone in the boardroom, the weight of impossible choices pressing down. You have to do it, Lena said quietly. Fire me. Save your position. No. Adrian, they gave you an out. Take it before they destroy you completely. They're not destroying me. He turned to face her. I'm just finally admitting what I've known for months. I don't want this anymore. Not like this. Not if it means sacrificing people who matter to protect a position that's been suffocating me for years. You're talking about walking away from everything you built. I'm talking about choosing something that actually makes me want to get up in the morning. Adrian's expression was fierce. I'm talking about Evie asking if I still love her, and realizing that if I keep sacrificing my humanity for this company, the answer might eventually become no. Lena felt tears burn her eyes. What are you going to do? Something I should have done a long time ago. He checked his watch. Come on, I need to make some calls. The next 2 hours passed in a blur. Adrian locked himself in his office, and Lena could hear his voice through the door, calm, measured, making decisions that would change everything. She sat in her own office, staring at her designs, and tried to process what was happening. Maya found her there around 11. Please tell me Adrian's not actually considering resigning, Maya said, dropping into the chair across from Lena's desk. I think he already decided. Jesus. Maya ran her hands over her face. This is insane. He can't just walk away. Can't he? The board gave him an impossible choice. Fire me or lose everything, and we both know he won't fire me. Because he's in love with you. The words hung in the air between them. Lena wanted to deny it, wanted to claim it was just professional respect or gratitude or anything less complicated. But she'd felt Adrian's hands in her hair last night, had tasted his desperation and hope, and knew Maya was right. It doesn't matter what he feels, Lena said quietly. I won't let him destroy his life for me. What if that's not your decision to make? Maya's voice was gentle.
What if he wants to choose you? And the real question is whether you're brave enough to let him. Before Lena could answer, Adrian appeared in her doorway. "It's done," he said. Maya stood. "I'll give you 2 a minute." She squeezed Lena's shoulder on her way out. Adrian closed the door, leaned against it. He looked exhausted, but somehow lighter, like he'd been carrying weight for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to set it down. "What did you do?" Lena asked. "I called the board, told them I'd be resigning as CEO effective immediately." He said it calmly, like he was discussing quarterly reports instead of dismantling his entire life. "I also told them the sustainability project moves forward with you as lead designer, or I pull my personal investment and they can explain to shareholders why they just lost $200 million in funding." "Adrian, I'm not finished. I called my lawyer and started paperwork to restructure my shares. I'll retain ownership but step back from daily operations. The board can choose a new CEO who will play their political games." He moved closer. "And I called Evie's school, told them I'd be picking her up every day from now on, that I'd actually be present for parent-teacher conferences and school plays and all the things I've been too busy for." Lena stood on shaking legs. "You just walked away from everything." "No, I walked away from the things that were killing me slowly." "There's a difference." He took her hands. "I kept the things that matter. My daughter. My integrity. You. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave and brilliant and terrified of letting anyone close enough to hurt you. I know you fight for what you believe in, even when it costs everything. I know being around you makes me feel alive for the first time in 6 years. His thumbs traced circles on her wrists. "I know walking away from Kane Dynamics is the sanest thing I've done since my wife died. What if this is a mistake? What if we crash and burn and you regret it?" "Then we'll regret it together." Adrian pulled her close. "I'm tired of making safe choices that lead nowhere, Lena. I want to make brave ones. With you." She looked up at him, this man who'd had everything and chose to risk it for something real, and felt the last of her walls crumble. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too. I don't know how to do this. How to let someone in without waiting for them to leave." "We'll figure it out." Kissed her forehead. "One disaster at a time." Lena laughed despite everything, and it felt like breathing after holding her breath for years. "Your daughter's going to hate me. Evie's going to love you. She's been asking why I never smile anymore. You make me smile." "What about Mateo? He thinks all rich people are users." "Then I'll prove him wrong." Adrian tilted her chin up. "I'm good at proving people wrong." "That's true. You definitely proved Victor wrong. Victor can go to hell." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and full of promises neither of them knew how to keep, but were willing to try anyway. When they finally broke apart, Chicago spread out beneath them through the windows, endless and impossible and somehow exactly where they both needed to be. "So what happens now?" Lena asked. "Now we build something new, something better." Adrian smiled and it transformed his whole face. "Together." The word had never sounded so much like hope. The news broke within hours. Adrian Kane stepping down as CEO made headlines across every business outlet in Chicago and half the national media. The stories ranged from sympathetic to vicious, but they all asked the same question. Why would a billionaire tech founder walk away from his own empire for a woman nobody had heard of 3 months ago? Lena read the articles on her phone while sitting in Adrian's penthouse, a space so enormous and sterile it felt more like a museum than a home. Evie was at school, and Adrian was in back-to-back calls with lawyers and accountants, trying to untangle years of his life from a company that no longer wanted him leading it. "Former CEO Adrian Kane's shocking fall from grace," one headline screamed. Another offered, "Love or lunacy? Tech mogul abandons billion-dollar company for controversial designer." Her favorite was the opinion piece that called her a gold-digging opportunist, while simultaneously admitting her sustainability design was genuinely revolutionary. Apparently, she could be both a talentless fraud and a brilliant innovator, depending on which narrative sold better. Maya texted, "Don't read the comments. Seriously. Nothing good has ever come from reading comments." Lena read them anyway. Most were predictably cruel. Some defended Adrian's choice. A few even defended her, pointing out that maybe a man who'd been grieving for 6 years deserved to make one decision based on happiness instead of obligation. She was deep in a particularly nasty thread when Adrian emerged from his office, loosening his tie with the exhausted gesture of someone who'd been fighting battles in 3 languages simultaneously. Still reading that garbage? He took the phone from her hands, set it face down on the counter. I told you to ignore it. Hard to ignore when my face is on the front page of the Tribune. They used a terrible photo. You're much prettier in person. He opened the refrigerator, nearly empty except for expensive water and what looked like a very sad container of takeout from 2 weeks ago. I should probably learn to grocery shop now that I'll have free time. Adrian? Lena waited until he looked at her. Are you really okay with this? Giving up everything you built? I'm terrified, he admitted, closing the fridge. I've been CEO of something since I was 26. I don't know how to be just Adrian, just a father, just a person who exists without a company defining him. He moved closer, bracing his hands on the counter on either side of her. But I know I was dying slowly in that role, and I'd rather be terrified and alive than comfortable and hollow. What if the project fails? What if my design doesn't work and you sacrificed everything for nothing? Then we'll have failed at something worth attempting. That's better than succeeding at things that don't matter. He kissed her forehead. Stop waiting for this to fall apart, Lena. We're allowed to try being happy. Before she could respond, the penthouse door opened and Evie's voice rang out, bright and young, and completely unaware of the chaos surrounding them. Dad, you're actually home. Footsteps thundered through the apartment. Mrs. Martinez said you were picking me up every day now, and I told her she was lying, but Evie skidded into the kitchen and stopped dead. Her eyes went from Adrian to Lena and back again, taking in their proximity, the casual intimacy of the moment. Oh, she said quietly. You have company. Adrian straightened, suddenly awkward in a way Lena had never seen him. Evie, this is Lena. She worked at Kane Dynamics. We're friends, Lena supplied, sliding off the counter and extending a hand. I'm Lena. It's nice to meet you. Evie stared at the offered hand like it might bite her. She was small for 8, with Adrian's gray eyes and dark hair pulled into a ponytail that was coming loose. There was a paint stain on her uniform sweater and what looked like marker on her hand. You're the lady from the news, Evie said finally. The one everyone says is Dad's girlfriend. Evie, Adrian started, but his daughter cut him off. Are you? His girlfriend? Lena glanced at Adrian, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. It's complicated. That's what adults say when they mean yes, but don't want to admit it. Evie's expression was unreadable. My friend Sophia's dad got a girlfriend after her mom left. Sophia hated her. The words landed like stones. Adrian moved toward his daughter, but Evie stepped back. I have homework, she said, voice small. Can I go to my room? Of course, but Evie, she was already gone. Footsteps retreating down the hallway, a door closing with just enough force to make a point without being actual defiance. Adrian and Lena stood in the too big kitchen, surrounded by awkward silence and the weight of complications neither of them knew how to navigate. That went well, Lena said quietly. She's protective, scared of losing more than she already has. Adrian rubbed his face. I should have prepared her. Should have talked to her before bringing you here. You didn't bring me here. I showed up uninvited because reporters were camped outside my apartment. Still, this is her home. She has a right to feel safe in it. He looked toward the hallway where Evie had disappeared. Maybe you should go. Give me time to talk to her alone. The suggestion hurt more than it should have. Lena nodded, grabbing her bag. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Lena, wait. Adrian caught her hand. I didn't mean... It's fine, really. She needs you. I get it. Lena forced a smile that felt like it might crack her face. I'll call you later. She left before he could see how much the dismissal stung. Because this was the reality of loving someone with a child. Sometimes you came second, and that was how it should be. But knowing that didn't make it hurt less. The L train carried her south through a city that suddenly felt hostile. Every other passenger seemed to be looking at their phones, and Lena couldn't shake the paranoid certainty that they were reading about her. The controversial designer, the woman who destroyed Adrian Kane's career, the opportunist who saw a lonely billionaire and pounced. By the time she reached her apartment, Lena felt scraped raw. Matteo was sprawled on the couch doing homework, and he took one look at her face and sat up. What happened? I met Adrian's daughter. She hates me. Did she actually say that? She didn't have to. Lena dropped onto the couch beside him. I'm the stranger invading her space, stealing her father's attention. Of course she hates me. Mateo was quiet for a moment. Then, when Mom first brought home that guy Marcus, remember him? The one who stayed for like 3 months? The one who stole our TV when he left? Yeah, him. I hated him the second I saw him. Not because he was a bad person, though obviously he was, but because he meant sharing Mom's attention, which was already so limited that splitting it felt like losing what little we had. Mateo closed his textbook. But you're not Marcus, and Adrian's not Mom, so maybe give the kid time before deciding it's hopeless. Lena leaned her head on her brother's shoulder. When did you get so smart? Always been smart. You just never notice because you're always working. Fair point. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Mateo said, the school called today. Said you're listed as my guardian and they needed updated contact information. What did you tell them? That you're still at the same number, but it made me think, what happens if this thing with Adrian works out? Do we move into some fancy penthouse? Do I have to go to private school with rich kids who summer in the Hamptons? Nobody's moving anywhere, and definitely no Hamptons. Lena sat up to look at him properly. Whatever happens with Adrian, you and me, we're solid. That doesn't change. Promise? Promise. But lying in bed that night, Lena wondered if that was a promise she could actually keep. Because integrating her life with Adrian's meant merging two completely different worlds. His penthouse and her walk-up, his expensive lawyers and her public defender on speed dial, his daughter's private school and Mateo's struggling public one. How did people make that work without losing themselves in the gap? The answer came 3 days later, though not in any way Lena expected. She was at Kane Dynamics, technically still employed until the board finalized new leadership, when Maya burst into her office looking frantic. We have a problem, a big one. Lena looked up from the structural calculations she'd been reviewing. What kind of problem? The City Planning Commission just rejected our environmental impact study, said the data is insufficient to grant the variances we need. Maya dropped a thick folder on Lena's desk. Without those variances, we can't build vertical gardens above 12 stories, which means your design is dead. Lena's stomach dropped. They approved the preliminary study. What changed? Victor Hale's father sits on the Planning Commission's advisory board. What do you think changed? Maya's expression was grim. He's killing the project to punish Adrian for walking away. Can they do that? Just arbitrarily reject our application? They can if they find technical justification. And they did. There's a gap in our soil contamination analysis for the proposed site. Maya flipped open the folder. It's a minor gap, something we could fix in a week, but they're using it to table the entire project indefinitely. Lena felt fury rise in her chest. So we fix it. We provide the additional data and resubmit. It's not that simple. The commission only meets quarterly. By the time we can resubmit, we'll have lost our construction window. The whole timeline gets pushed back 18 months minimum. Maya slumped into a chair. Edward Hale is making sure your design never gets built, and there's nothing we can do about it. There's always something we can do. Lena spent the next 6 hours digging through Chicago Municipal Code, planning commission regulations, and environmental law. She called contacts from her Meridian days, people who remembered her as the whistleblower who'd helped clean up corruption. She cross-referenced commission members' voting records and found patterns that made her skin crawl. By midnight, she had something. Not much, but enough. She called Adrian. He answered on the first ring, voice rough with sleep. Lena, it's almost 1 a.m. What's wrong? I need you to trust me. Can you get me a meeting with the Tribune's investigative team tomorrow morning? What? Why? Because Edward Hale has been using his position on the Planning Commission to kill projects that compete with his son's investments. I can prove it, but I need a platform to make it public before he buries the evidence. There was a long pause. Lena, if you go after Edward Hale, he'll destroy you. He has resources we can't match. He's already destroying me. The project's dead anyway unless we fight back. Her hand tightened on the phone. I'm done letting powerful men decide my future. Are you with me or not? Another pause, then, I'll make the call. Tribune's conference room, 9 a.m. The meeting with the Tribune lasted 3 hours. Lena laid out everything. Edward Hale's pattern of using his advisory position to benefit his son's competing developments, the suspicious timing of project rejections, the financial connections between rejected proposals, and Victor Hale's investment portfolio. She provided documents, voting records, email trails she'd obtained through sources she refused to name. The investigative reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Carla Rodriguez, listened to everything with increasing interest. "This is good," Carla said finally. "But it's circumstantial. We'd need direct evidence of quid pro quo to run with it." "I can get that." Lena pulled out her laptop. Edward Hale's assistant filed building permits for 3 properties in the last year, all approved within days despite being incomplete applications. Standard permits take 6 weeks minimum. Someone expedited them. Who? Samuel Chen, deputy commissioner. He also happens to golf with Edward every Tuesday. Lena showed them the connection. "If you can get Chen on record discussing those expedited permits, you'll have your direct evidence." Carla looked at her colleague. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Then she turned back to Lena. "If we run this story, you'll be painted as vindictive, as someone attacking the Hales because Adrian chose you over his company. Let them paint me however they want. The truth matters more than my reputation." "Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, you're about to make some very powerful enemies. Enemies who'll make your life hell." Adrian, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. "She's already living in hell. At least this way she's fighting back." Carla studied them both for a long moment. "All right, we'll pursue it. But Lena, you should prepare yourself. When this breaks, it's going to get ugly." "It's already ugly," Lena said. "Might as well make it count." The story ran 4 days later, front page of the Tribune, Planning Commission Corruption, How One Family Gamed Chicago's Development System. It detailed everything Lena had uncovered, backed by additional reporting the Tribune team had done independently. Samuel Chen, when confronted by reporters, had cracked and confirmed that Edward Hale regularly pressured him to expedite projects that benefited Victor's investments. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Edward Hale resigned from the advisory board within 12 hours. The Planning Commission announced a full review of all decisions made in the past 3 years. Victor's investment firm lost half its clients in 2 days. And Lena became, once again, the woman who'd brought down powerful men by exposing their corruption. The difference was this time, she had Adrian standing beside her when the press descended. They held a joint statement outside Kane Dynamics. Adrian in a suit, Lena in jeans and a blazer, both of them refusing to look apologetic. "We're not here to gloat," Adrian told the cameras. "We're here to say that Chicago deserves better than a system where wealth and connections matter more than merit and integrity. Lena Hart uncovered corruption that's been harming this city for years. She should be celebrated, not vilified." A reporter shouted, "Mr. Kane, do you regret stepping down as CEO?" "Not for a second." "Ms. Hart, what do you say to accusations that you're just settling scores with the Hales?" Lena stepped forward. "I say that if exposing corruption looks like settling scores, maybe we should ask ourselves why we're more comfortable with corruption than accountability." The questions kept coming, but Adrian touched her elbow, a signal they'd agreed on, and they walked away together, leaving the press shouting at their backs. In the car, Lena's hands shook with adrenaline. "That was terrifying." "You were perfect." Adrian took her hand, fierce and brilliant and completely unafraid. "I was absolutely afraid. I just didn't let it stop me. That's called courage." He lifted her hand to his lips. "I'm proud of you." The words settled into Lena's chest like warmth. When was the last time someone had been proud of her? When had anyone looked at her choices, messy and complicated and often destructive, and seen strength instead of damage? Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "Planning Commission fast-tracked our resubmission. We're back on schedule. You magnificent crazy person." Lena showed Adrian the message. He grinned, and it transformed his whole face the way it always did when he forgot to be the controlled CEO and just let himself feel things. "We should celebrate," he said. "How?" "I have an idea, but you'll need to trust me." An hour later, they stood outside Evie's school, waiting for dismissal. Lena felt distinctly out of place among the other parents, mostly mothers in expensive athleisure, discussing fundraisers and college prep for 8-year-olds. "Why are we here?" she asked. "Because I promised Evie I'd pick her up every day. And because you two need to actually talk without me hovering anxiously in the background." Adrian squeezed her hand. "She's scared, Lena. Not mean, just scared. Give her a chance." The school doors opened and children poured out like a dam breaking. Evie emerged near the back, head down, backpack dragging. When she saw Adrian, her face lit up. Then she saw Lena, and the light dimmed. "Hey, sweetheart." Adrian crouched to her level. "Good day?" "It was okay." Evie's eyes flicked to Lena. "Why is she here?" "Because I thought maybe you and Lena could get to know each other. Maybe get ice cream." "I don't want ice cream." "Evie, I don't want her here, Dad." Evie's voice cracked. "Why does she have to be here? Why can't it just be us?" Adrian looked helpless. Lena felt her heart break for both of them. This man trying so hard to balance his daughter's needs with his own. This child trying to protect what little stability she had left. Lena knelt down, meeting Evie at eye level. "You're right. It should be just you and your dad. You've been sharing him with work for years, and now I show up expecting to share him too. That's not fair." Evie stared at her, suspicion warring with surprise. "But here's the thing," Lena continued. "I'm not trying to take your dad away. I'm not trying to replace anyone or make you love me or pretend to be your mom. I'm just someone who cares about your dad and wants to make him happy, same as you. You don't know him like I do." "You're right, I don't. I've known him for 3 months. You've known him your whole life. That makes you the expert." Lena sat back on her heels. "So maybe you could teach me. Help me understand what makes him happy, because I'm honestly pretty terrible at this whole relationship thing, and I could use some guidance." Evie's expression shifted, caught between defensiveness and curiosity. "What do you mean you're terrible at it?" "I mean, I've never had a relationship that didn't end badly. I'm scared all the time that I'm going to mess this up, and I definitely don't know how to be around kids because my own childhood was kind of a disaster." Lena offered a small smile. "So basically, I'm flying blind here and hoping I don't crash." Something softened in Evie's face. "Dad says you're really brave, that you fight for what's right, even when it's scary. Your dad makes me sound a lot better than I am. Mostly I'm just stubborn and bad at giving up." "He smiles now," Evie said quietly. "He didn't used to, not really. But since he met you, he smiles like he means it." Lena felt her throat tighten. "Yeah? Yeah." Evie looked down at her shoes, light up sneakers that blinked with every step. "I still don't want to share him, but I guess if someone has to make him smile, it might as well be you." It wasn't acceptance, exactly, but it wasn't rejection either. It was something cautious and fragile and real. "Ice cream sounds okay," Evie added, "but I get to pick the place, and I'm ordering extra toppings because Dad never lets me." Adrian laughed, genuine and surprised and full of relief. "Deal." They ended up at a tiny ice cream shop Evie declared the best in Chicago, where she ordered a sundae that was more toppings than ice cream and proceeded to tell Lena every detail of her day with the intensity only 8-year-olds could muster. Lena listened, asked questions, and tried not to notice the way Adrian watched them both with something that looked suspiciously like hope. It wasn't perfect. Evie still looked at Lena with wariness sometimes, still positioned herself between Lena and Adrian like a tiny protective barrier. But she also laughed at Lena's terrible jokes and asked about her designs, and admitted that maybe it would be okay if Lena came over for dinner sometimes. Walking back to Adrian's car, Evie's sticky hand somehow found its way into Lena's, and the trust in that small gesture made Lena want to cry. "Thank you," Adrian said quietly, while Evie ran ahead to press her face against a pet store window. "For what?" "For being honest with her, for not pretending this is simple." He pulled Lena close. "For trying even when it's terrifying. Well, apparently I'm stubborn and bad at giving up. Best qualities in a person." He kissed her forehead. "I love you. You know, I should probably say that out loud instead of just feeling it constantly." The words stopped Lena's breath. "Adrian, you don't have to say it back. I know you're scared. I know this is all happening too fast and you're waiting for it to fall apart." His hand cupped her face. "But I need you to know anyway. I love you. Messy, stubborn, terrified of happiness you. All of it." Lena looked at him. This man who'd given up everything safe to choose something real, and felt the last of her walls crumble. "I love you too," she whispered, "and it's absolutely terrifying." "Good. We can be terrified together." Evie came running back, chattering about the puppies in the window. oblivious to the way her world had just shifted into something new and uncertain and full of possibility. The sustainability project broke ground 6 months later on a bright June morning that felt like a promise. Lena stood at the construction site watching the first foundation pillars go in and tried to comprehend that the building she'd sketched in countless late nights was becoming real.
Maya appeared at her elbow, hard hat and clipboard in hand. "You look like you're about to cry." "I'm not crying. You're absolutely crying." "Okay, maybe a little." Lena wiped her eyes. "It's just, this is real. Actually real. Something I made is going to stand here for decades." "Something you fought for," Maya corrected. "Against Victor, against Edward, against everyone who said you weren't qualified." She bumped Lena's shoulder. "You earned this."
The project had transformed in those 6 months. After the Planning Commission scandal broke, new commissioners had fast-tracked not just their variance approval, but additional funding for community features. The design had evolved, improved, become something even more ambitious than Lena's original vision. Maya's environmental team had contributed innovations Lena never would have thought of alone. Local artists had been commissioned for public spaces. It was no longer just Lena's project. It belonged to everyone who'd believed in it. Adrian arrived with Evie, both wearing matching hard hats that made Lena smile. Evie ran over, excited about the construction equipment, asking 100 questions about how buildings grew from the ground up. "Can I help build it?" she asked Lena. "Maybe when you're older. For now, you can help me pick colors for the community gardens." "Really? I get to pick?" "Some of them. We're collaborating." Lena knelt down. "What do you think we should plant?" Evie considered this with the seriousness of someone being trusted with something important. "Flowers that butterflies like, and vegetables people can eat, and maybe a tree that birds can nest in." "Those are perfect ideas. We'll make it happen." Adrian watched them with an expression that made Lena's heart ache in the best way. Later, when Evie was distracted by the construction foreman explaining how cranes worked, he pulled Lena aside. "There's something I want to show you." He led her to a cleared area at the edge of the construction site, where a small plaque had been installed on a temporary stand. Lena read the inscription, "The Hart Kane Sustainability Center, built by those who believed better was possible." "Hart Kane?" she repeated. "Equal partnership, your vision, my resources, our shared belief that buildings should give back more than they take." Adrian's hand found hers. "The board approved it this morning. Your name goes on this building." Lena stared at the plaque, throat too tight to speak. Her name. Permanent. Carved into something that would outlast her. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll move in with me. With us." Adrian turned her to face him. "The penthouse is too big and too empty, and Evie keeps asking when you're coming back. I want you there permanently, messily, really." Adrian, I know it's fast. I know it's complicated, but we've already blown past complicated into something that looks suspiciously like family. His thumb traced her cheekbone. "Mateo, too. There's plenty of room, and he wouldn't have to change schools, and maybe having people around would make that place feel less like a museum." "You're serious." "I'm terrified, but yes, completely serious." Lena thought about her tiny apartment, about Mateo struggling with homework at their secondhand table, about the way Adrian's penthouse had started feeling more like home than anywhere she'd lived. She thought about Evie asking if Lena could read bedtime stories, about Adrian's smile when he woke up next to her, about the possibility of building something stable for the first time in her life. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Okay, we'll move in. We'll try this. We'll probably mess it up spectacularly at some point, but we'll try." She pulled him close. "Together. Together," Adrian echoed, and kissed her in front of contractors and engineers and the building that was becoming their shared legacy. Mateo took the news about moving better than Lena expected. He walked through the penthouse with wide eyes, testing the acoustics by yelling in the too big living room, claiming the bedroom with the best view, and declaring the kitchen criminally underused by people who can actually afford food. "You're really okay with this?" Lena asked him. "Are you kidding? There's a gym in the building, and a doorman, and Adrian said I can have friends over without worrying about Mrs. Chen downstairs complaining about noise." Mateo flopped onto the leather couch. "Plus, Evie's cool, for an 8-year-old. She thinks you're cool too, for a 16-year-old. We have an understanding. I teach her about good music. She teaches me about her dad's weaknesses so I can properly embarrass him. Lena laughed. You two are going to destroy him. That's the plan. Mateo's expression turned serious. But really, you happy? Actually happy. Not just convincing yourself you should be? The question caught Lena off guard. She thought about it, really thought about it. Yeah, she said finally, I think I am. It's weird and scary and I keep waiting for something to go wrong. But when I'm here, when I'm with them, it feels right. Like I finally found somewhere I fit. Good. You deserve that. Mateo stood, stretched. Now can you help me explain to Adrian why I need faster internet? His current setup is basically dial-up. It's fiber optic. Exactly. Basically dial-up. They settled into routines that felt simultaneously natural and surreal. Lena learned Evie's complicated system for organizing her stuffed animals. Adrian learned that Mateo considered any meal before noon a hate crime against teenagers. Evie learned that Lena would read 3 extra chapters if properly negotiated with. Mateo learned that Adrian would help with homework without making it feel like judgment. It wasn't seamless. They fought about stupid things, whose turn it was to do dishes, whether homework came before or after screen time, how to handle Evie's lingering grief about her mother that sometimes surfaced in angry outbursts at Lena. There were nights when Lena lay awake wondering if she was screwing up these kids' lives. Mornings when Adrian questioned whether he was being fair to Evie by bringing someone new into her world so quickly. But there were also Saturday mornings where all 4 of them made pancakes, and the kitchen turned into a flour-covered disaster. Movie nights where they argued good-naturedly about what to watch and ended up falling asleep in a pile on the couch. Dinners where they actually sat together and talked about their days, and it felt like the kind of family Lena had never thought she'd have. 3 months after they moved in, Lena woke up to find Evie standing beside the bed, holding her favorite stuffed elephant. Bad dream? Lena whispered, careful not to wake Adrian. Evie nodded. Can I stay here? Of course. Evie climbed into bed between them, curling into Lena's side with the easy trust of a child who'd decided this person was safe. Lena held her, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing, and thought about how love didn't always announce itself with grand gestures. Sometimes it was just this, a small body seeking comfort, a choice to provide it, a moment of connection that meant more than any declaration. Adrian woke up, saw them, and smiled in the darkness. He reached across Evie to take Lena's hand, and they lay there together, patchwork family made of grief and survival, and the stubborn choice to keep trying. The Hart Cain Sustainability Center opened 18 months later to national acclaim. Architectural journals called it revolutionary. Environmental organizations praised its innovation. The community embraced it as a space that actually served their needs instead of just gentrifying their neighborhood. But for Lena, the best moment came during the opening ceremony when a young woman approached her, maybe 20, nervous, clutching a portfolio. Ms. Hart, I'm Maria. I'm studying environmental design at community college. She held out the portfolio with shaking hands. I saw what you built and I wanted to show you my work. I don't have formal credentials either, but I have ideas and I thought maybe... Lena took the portfolio. Let me see. The designs inside were raw but brilliant, full of the kind of innovation that came from understanding poverty and environmental justice, not as abstract concepts, but as lived reality. These are remarkable, Lena said honestly. Have you applied for internships? Everywhere. Nobody will even look at my work without a 4-year degree. Lena recognized herself in this young woman, the hunger, the talent, the systematic rejection by a system that valued credentials over capability. She pulled out a business card. Call this number Monday morning. Tell them I referred you. We're starting a program for designers from non-traditional backgrounds. Full mentorship, real projects, actual pay. Lena handed back the portfolio. You belong in this field, Maria. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. I have every idea, Lena smiled. Someone gave me a chance when they didn't have to. I'm just paying it forward. Later, when the ceremony ended and the crowds dispersed, Lena stood with Adrian on the building's rooftop garden, one of her favorite features, a green oasis 40 stories above the city. You did it, Adrian said, pulling her close.
You built something that matters. We did it. This doesn't exist without you believing in it. I just provided resources. You provided the vision. He kissed her temple, and the stubbornness to see it through.
Lena leaned into him, looking out at Chicago's skyline, glass and steel, and somewhere among it all, the buildings she'd helped create. Below them, the community center already bustled with activity. Families using the gardens, students studying in the solar-powered library, programs running that would serve this neighborhood for generations.
I used to think success meant proving everyone wrong, Lena said quietly, showing all the people who doubted me that I was worthy after all. But standing here now, I realize that's not what this is about. What's it about? Building something that helps people, creating opportunities for others like Maria, who just need someone to see their potential. She turned in his arms. It's not about me at all. It's about what comes after. Adrian smiled. When did you get so wise?
Learn from the best. She echoed Mateo's words, and they both laughed. They stood there as the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere below, Evie and Mateo were probably getting into trouble in the interactive science exhibit. Tomorrow, Lena would start interviewing candidates for the mentorship program. Next week, Adrian had meetings about a new venture, something smaller and more focused than Kane Dynamics, something that actually excited him. The future felt uncertain and full of possibility, which Lena had learned was exactly how the best things started. You know what I realized? Adrian said. That night I found you in the rain. I thought I was saving you, but you saved me. From becoming someone I didn't recognize. From forgetting what actually matters. We saved each other, Lena corrected. That's how this works. Nobody's the hero, nobody's the victim. We're just two broken people who decided to be broken together, and somehow that made us both more whole. That's definitely going in your next building dedication speech. Absolutely not. It's way too cheesy. You said it, not me. Lena laughed, and the sound carried across the rooftop garden, mixing with city noise and evening air. She thought about the girl she'd been 3 years ago, desperate and alone, stealing food to survive, convinced she'd never amount to anything. She thought about the woman she'd become, still scared, still imperfect, but no longer running from connection. She thought about Evie learning to call her Lena instead of Dad's girlfriend, about Mateo thriving in his new school, about Adrian teaching himself to cook dinner because it meant family time. She thought about messy mornings and complicated nights, and all the small moments that added up to something resembling happiness. It wasn't the ending she'd imagined when she collapsed in the rain outside Kane Dynamics, portfolio clutched to her chest, running from men who thought they owned the right to her body and her silence. It was better. Messier, definitely. Harder than she'd expected in some ways, easier in others. But real in a way that fairy tale endings never were. Because the truth about survival, about really surviving, not just staying alive but actually living, was that it required other people. Required letting them see your broken pieces and trusting they wouldn't use them as weapons. Required building something together that couldn't exist if you'd stayed alone. Lena had spent her whole life thinking she needed to be strong enough to handle everything by herself. Turned out, the real strength was in admitting she didn't have to. We should go find the kids, Adrian said, before they reprogram the building's automation system for fun. Mateo wouldn't do that. He absolutely would, and Evie would help. They headed toward the elevator, hand in hand, and Lena felt a completeness she'd never expected to find. Not because everything was perfect, it wasn't, but because the imperfections felt manageable when shared. The elevator descended through the building Lena had designed, past community spaces and green walls and systems designed to give back more than they took. At ground level, they found Evie and Mateo exactly where predicted. In the interactive exhibit, Mateo showing Evie how to hack the touchscreens to make the displays do things they definitely weren't programmed for. Should we stop them? Adrian asked. Probably. But also, this is excellent bonding. Lena watched her patchwork family with something that felt dangerously like contentment. Give them 5 more minutes. So they stood there together, watching two kids from completely different worlds collaborate on minor chaos, and Lena understood that this, right here, was what she'd been fighting for all along. Not the buildings, or the recognition, or the proof that she mattered. Just this, a place to belong, people to belong with. The radical possibility that broken things could be rebuilt into something beautiful. Outside, Chicago stretched endlessly in every direction, full of other people fighting their own battles, building their own futures, trying to survive in a world that didn't make survival easy. Somewhere out there, another young woman was probably running from something, clutching dreams nobody had bothered to notice. Another man was probably drowning in grief and obligation, forgetting what it felt like to choose happiness. Lena hoped they found each other. Hoped they found whatever version of this messy, complicated, terrifying, beautiful thing she and Adrian had stumbled into. Because if there was anything her story proved, it was this. The people who survive aren't the strongest or the smartest or the ones with the best credentials. They're the ones who refuse to stop trying, who keep building even when everything falls apart, who choose connection over safety again and again until someday the connection becomes the safety. They're the ones brave enough to stop running. And sometimes, not always, not even often, but sometimes, that bravery gets rewarded with something worth staying for.